Hello there, and thanks for staying with us on TVC News for more of Decision 2023. And well, so far the wait continues, but already, at least going by figures and results being dished out from the National Collation Center regarding how everything went down regarding results at the presidential elections. We've got about 1/3 of the 36 states of the Federation, as well as the FCT. That is now 1/3 of those of the states of the Federation have results have been announced from Abuja, and of course more are still being expected. The National Collation Center, as announced by the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, has now suspended proceedings for today to resume 11 a.m. on Tuesday morning. But of course, we'll continue to wait. We'll also continue with our analysis here in the studio. And to help us to better understand all the happenings and give sense to all that has gone down across the country regarding the National Assembly and presidential elections, BKO Babajide Kolade Otitoju is here with me in the studio, as well as Biodun Shoumi. It's good to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
It's our pleasure.
All right, to further guide us in our discussions at this time, let's quickly bring up some of the recent happenings in terms of reactions to the general elections here in Nigeria. ECOWAS and the African Union now say there is overall improvement in the election process in Nigeria, and they have also commended the country over the progress made, especially the position of the government on ensuring credible elections with the adoption of the new Electoral Act. And TVC News' Moyo Thomas has more.
ECOWAS and the African Union observers brief on their preliminary assessment of the voting process. They applaud the general calm and peaceful atmosphere at most of the election polling units across the country, but they acknowledged and condemned the pockets of violence recorded in some states.
The increasing misinformation and disinformation on social media, including misleading conjectures and projections regarding the outcome of the 25th February 2023 general elections, liable to cause disaffection and inflame tension in the polity. It urges the public to disregard the provocations and continue to rely on official pronouncements of the electoral process by INEC and other competent national institutions.
The electoral environment was generally peaceful, despite isolated incidents of violence, and the polls took place against the backdrop of a cash crisis following the redesigning of the Naira currency, while a range of stakeholders acknowledged this in a positive spirit and supported the policy of the Naira redesign.
The Commonwealth Group, who spoke immediately after, also applauded the general conduct of the election, but like ECOWAS and AU, noted that the late arrival of election officers and materials, slow setup in some polling units, and glitches with beavers in some voting centers slowed the process.
The close and count followed the due process for the most part with a high degree of transparency. And though various polling units experienced significant delays in closing due to their late openings, we found that the management of closing and count procedures varied in consistency.
The mission calls for total commitment to the rule of law and democratic principles until the conclusion of the process. They also encourage aggrieved parties to use legally established channels to seek recourse. The African Union, ECOWAS, and Commonwealth urges Nigerians to remain calm until the final result is out. And the preliminary report also says there is need for constant communication with the public on the electoral process. Moya Thomas, TVC News, Abuja.
And this is the thrust with which we open our next stage of discussions on Decision 2023 right here on TVC News. And of course, we saw that report that the ECOWAS body, African Union, as well as even the Commonwealth, these three international groups have all they sent representatives to observe the elections, general elections in Nigeria, and they have made preliminary reports saying that the polls in Nigeria were generally peaceful and have called for calm. That voters, Nigerians generally should await the full official figures and not make provocative statements at this time. BKO, what do you make of this report by the international community?
Yes, I think it's fair enough. Just like the rest of us, they complained about INEC's tardiness in the management of the process, the delays occasioned by late arrival of ballot materials, the glitches that accompany the use of the beavers in some polling stations, and isolated cases of violent convulsions in some parts of the country. And listening to President Kenyatta, you could feel the satisfaction in his voice that, yes, violence was recorded, but it was just in isolated cases, just in a few cases, not that you can say this election was generally characterized by violence. To say that is to be dishonest. There are many states where elections were held and violence was not recorded. Peaceful, generally peaceful elections. We have not reached that point when you could be talking about the general election in our country involving the 36 states and FCT, and you will expect that that violence will not happen anywhere. But it is emblematic of the increasing faith that Nigerians have in the electoral process, that these days, things that used to happen in the past, like ballot box snatching, outright writing of results, these things don't happen anymore. And that is why you see that in some of the states, unknown candidates without any pedigree, were able to win the elections because the process was fair, and the Beavers is a leveler. It ensures that if you are not qualified to take part in the elections, you will not vote. So I am happy with the way the elections went, and it is reassuring that these international observers also are convinced that generally this was a peaceful election, transparent and credible, in spite of the noise being made by a section of the political class.
Right, and like Bikio, said, the international community also acknowledged the hitches here and there, but they went on to say that, okay, yes, we listened to the former president Uhuru Kenyatta, who was also talking about the Naira cash, the Naira challenge now, how that could have impacted on, the challenges experienced in areas in some parts of the country. But in all, they were on all fours that it wasn't, enough to entirely condemn the electoral process or the voting process in Nigeria.
Yes, Kenyatta is quite right. And if you listen to Koroma, former president of Sierra Leone, who led the ECOWAS mission, what they focus on is very clear. They never said that we didn't have one or two isolated incidents in different places, at the same time. But the fact of the matter is that the election was peaceful, transparent, and not only that, they even commented on the conduct of electorates, which they applauded. And the critical issue when it comes to elections is substantial compliance with the electoral laws. Has there been substantial compliance with the Electoral Act? Yes, there has been, which many people applauded. It's interesting to note that those who applauded the cash swap scheme of the central bank are now the ones crying foul. Yes, it has led to low turnout. It has its own impact one way or the other in many places because we saw people queuing, from 6:30, and by 10 o'clock, INEC officials and materials have not arrived. So they've not been able to vote. And many of them wanted to buy water, and they didn't have the cash to buy the water. So they were forced to go back home. So there were a lot of factors that accounted for that. The militarization of democratic space, in terms of the military psychological operation intended, against hoodlums, which actually succeeded, but at the end of the day also made some people feel apprehensive and failed to turn up. So the fact of the matter is, when you look at this election, is one of the most free and fair since 1999. And I repeat, I'm stating this with clear knowledge of what happened in 2003 and 2007 election. Even to the point that the then elected President Yaradua admitted that there were serious irregularities and would embark on a reform process. That reform process was what we had developed on incrementally to the point where we now have a more credible election taking place. And that has been acknowledged by observers. There is no election anywhere in the whole world where you won't have isolated cases of problems. And that's exactly what we have in Nigeria. It is not widespread. It is not general. Violence has not stopped people from voting in many places. In fact, the reports from independent observers, both internal and external, supported that. So therefore, I think this election has been generally peaceful, well-managed, and well-conducted.
And it also kind of reflects, doesn't it, BKO, with an admonition by the Presidential Campaign Council of the APC earlier on today at a press conference in Abuja, where they urged the international community not to listen to what they said, the noise of, the opposition in Nigeria, but to listen to, the voices of people, the process of the polls, before, making any conclusions as to the kind of elections that were conducted in Nigeria.
Yeah, as observers, they saw the election, the general election. They didn't need anybody to tell them how it went. That's why they could put together a report. And if we are going to be honest with ourselves, yes, there were problems. It does not make any sense for people to continue to vote up till 1 a.m. That happened in Kaduna. But it's not as if that was the norm in the course of this election. In some cases, materials got to polling centers in good time. People had fun, voted, and went back home. So I don't think the opposition can actually influence the way the observers think. Otherwise, they are no longer observers. They came here, saw the election by themselves, and they made up their minds about how to rate the election. And in my view, they've rated the elections well. They were honest in terms of some of the problems encountered, and they would want to see improvement, especially in INEC's, the way INEC plans and executes its plan on election day.
All right, thank you. Let me put you on hold. Let's quickly bring in Celestina Area. She's been keeping tabs at the Sokoto State Collation Center. And hello, Celestina. What is the latest from Sokoto State regarding the collation of the presidential election? Have they concluded?
Not at all, Kemi. The Collation Center have gone on recess to reconvene in an hour. So far, out of 23 local governments, 21 local governments have turned in their results. So we are waiting 2 other local governments. But one thing is for sure, most of those local governments experience pockets of violence where polling units had to be cancelled. We have instances where, like that of Rabba local government, where we had 52 polling units having to be cancelled, and also Omako local government where 27 polling units in 7 wards had to be cancelled. The local government collation officer, when he was narrating the incident, made it known that the INEC officials had to run for their life because violence occurred, and that of Omako local government, the indigenous in the local government refused to use the beavers, refused to allow the INEC officials to use the beavers. They were insisting that it's only the voters registered that they are going to allow the INEC official use for them to cast their vote. So not to cause any scuffle, the INEC official allowed them, knowing that that process is not illegal, as stated by the Electoral Act. So far, we're still here waiting for the 2 other local governments to turn in their results. The collation process started very late, by 10 p.m. on Sunday. It's over 48 hours after the election, and we're still struggling to get in all the results so it can be sent down to ICC in Abuja.
All right, just quickly tell us now about if there were any instances of, overvoting. You've spoken about, some discrepancies that were identified during the voting of Saturday. But what about issues of overvoting? Was that spotted, and what was the effect of that?
Yes, issues about voting occurred, but just in very few polling units in some local governments, which the local government collation officer didn't fit to cancel those polling units. But so far, also we are also waiting the results of the National Assembly election. We know the election was also conducted on Saturday, but up to this very moment, we haven't heard anything about those results. The only thing we got to hear was that of Sokoto South and Sokoto North, though there was winners, yes, but 92 polling units were cancelled. So because of the amount of polling units that were cancelled because of electoral violence, INEC did not declare anyone winner. So it was stated that another day will be scheduled for a supplementary election to be held. The violence that occurred in the state is not like because of the fact that the police did not deploy security operatives to the various local governments. They did deploy because the security operatives, what they need to do is just to maintain law and order in the state. It's not as it's for them to go and cause voter intimidation or inducement. But if you look at what has happened or what occurred in those various colonies, you could see that it's an issue that could have been avoided because most of the materials that got to the local government areas very late. Some local government areas started commencing electoral process as at 4 p.m. when the electoral guidelines started 8 a.m. So those things, if you see persons were already on the queue, some persons got to the polling unit as early as 5 a.m. on Saturday waiting to pass a ballot, only for them to stay in the queue for up to like 5 hours before the electoral officers could get the local government and the polling unit to commence election. So the time of waiting and the queues were building up, cars were building up, all this led to agitation where some persons got offended, and out of annoyance and anger, the process was disrupted. So these are things that could have been avoided. And another thing that we should note is about the neutrality of the police in the conduct of this very election. We know the police, in line with Section 26 of Section 1 of the Electoral Act, they ought to give a silent oath of loyalty and neutrality in the electoral process, which is they will not interfere, they will not induce, they will not cause any violence. Their job is to ensure that the election is violence-free. But we don't know, okay, we're still waiting for other results from local government, after which there will be room for question and answer. We are going to ask the rest of the state if the police actually in this state actually pledged to that oath of loyalty and neutrality. So far, so good. 21 local government have been turning. We are waiting for local government results.
All right. And quickly, from the figures that have been shared so far with journalists, in terms of turnout, how impressive would you call the figures from Sokoto State?
Well, I must give it to residents in Sokoto State. They did turn out to cast their ballots, although most of them, well, I say, due to the issues that occurred with disenfranchised, because some polling units were cancelled. So if we could put together the polling units cancelled in the presidential National Assembly election, we will be having up to like 200 polling units altogether. So they did turn out a mass to cast a ballot because it is an important election as they are anticipating the governorship election come March 11th.
Celestina Area reported live from the State's Collation Center in Sokoto. Thank you very much for the updates. We'll reach you for more from your end. Biko, a quick, observation on the situation in Sokoto State, and then you wrap up the point we were making earlier about the election observers.
Yes, we had heard earlier that violence reared its ugly head in some parts of the state, especially Rabah, the hometown of the late Sultan, the late Ahmadu Bello, Premier of Northern Nigeria. Of course, that part of the state is noted for banditry. So I'm not surprised that violence was recorded in that part of the state. But generally, INEC has to improve in terms of timeliness. Even in urban centers like Abuja, there was this report that we got that at Penthouse Estate, which is on the way to the airport, ballot materials didn't get to the polling center there until around 11:45. So I don't think starting election late in even urban centers like Abuja is excusable. INEC has to improve in the area of distribution of electoral logistics, on election day. I know that to an extent the cash crunch slowed them down, because I've had some INEC officials say that it took them some time before they could negotiate and agree with drivers who were to deliver these electoral materials. There's another election next month. It's an opportunity for INEC to improve on the conduct of the presidential and National Assembly elections. But I don't think it makes sense to throw the baby throw away the baby with the bathwater, because we've seen improvement. We have to acknowledge that there's improvement in the area of the credibility of our elections, where in the past a sitting governor would be made to win an election because you didn't want to embarrass him. We are seeing that these days, this election has shown that anybody could be defeated. Anybody could be defeated. The governor of Cross River lost the senatorial election to a sitting senator. Anybody could be defeated, because now with the use of the beavers, you stand an equal chance of winning an election, even with a VIP, with a governor, anybody. It's no longer like what it used to be, whereby the results will simply be written on Form ECA and the result stands. You cannot do that anymore. You cannot bypass the beavers. You have to use it where people insist that it must not be used. No result will be returned from that particular polling center. So those who force the INEC staff to bypass the beavers, they merely wasted their time. So the thugs merely wasted their time because no results shall be returned from the polling centers.
Right, and Biodo, looking at the situation in Sokoto State, that wasn't the only state that recorded issues of violence, issues of lateness in arrival of INEC personnel. But what stands out for you? What are your takeaways now from the ongoing collation in Sokoto State? Anything rather outstanding, or do you just think it's it's like the usual walk in the park?
Yeah, what is going on in Sokoto State is quite very good. It's better for these issues to be sorted out before results are taken to the center. If you look at Section 64, subsection 6 of the Electoral Act, made provision for issues to be resolved, at the collation level, not when the result has been taken to the Chief Electoral Commissioner, which is Chief Returning Officer, which is the chairman of INEC. For people to come there and start raising objections. You should have raised all objections at the collation level. Section 64, subsection 6 clearly specify what needed to be done at that stage, which is if there's an objection, say for instance, the presiding officer has an issue or a candidate is disputing a result, then the returning officer will have to make sure that that is taken into account and is then recorded and noted that, of course, this is our own view, but there has been a dispute over this issue. And that will be clearly recorded, a copy given, to whoever the party agent disputing the result. And then the result will be finally tallied and then taken to Abuja for announcement. So, but what you see going on in Sokoto, it's quite very healthy. There are very few problems in terms of the violence in Sokoto, or the problems. It's only in one or two local governments, one or two areas. So, and this will be resolved as fast as possible. That should not affect the overall result coming from Sokoto in any case, because you cannot throw away, like Jide said, the baby with the bathwater. You cannot say because there are pockets of disturbances in one place or the other, you're throwing away the whole result. It's like saying because there was problem in Surulere, we knew there was problem in Lekki, there were incidents, and then you're throwing away the whole Lagos State result. Of course, that would not be acceptable, to all the parties, including the ruling party and the opposition party. That is not the way to go. The way to go is to sort out these issues the way they are doing it in Sokoto currently. And then the final collated result is taken to Abuja, for announcement. But the returning officer is no longer the business of people, political parties to go there and start raising issues. They have to wait until the result of the election is announced. Then they have a choice to recourse to the law. If you think, even with your objections, you still have a ground to challenge that result. Of course, the Constitution provides, a medium to resolve all issues, which is through the courts. So I think eventually, by tomorrow, we should have results coming from Sokoto.
All right, especially with the reports of about two more local governments there.
They will do that tomorrow.
To finalize, yes. The process in Sokoto State. But in the meantime, we bring in now another analyst this time to give his perspective to the general election here in Nigeria, talking about specifically the presidential election, and of course not forgetting the National Assembly elections that held on Saturday. Tosin Adeyanju is the Secretary, Support Groups Coordination of the Tinubu Presidential Campaign Council in the North Central Zone. It's good to have you join us. He joins us via Zoom. Of course, you also observed the election, but you've come in at a time when members of the international community have also sent in their preliminary reports about the election so far. And according to the African Union, ECOWAS, the European Union has also spoken, saying that Nigeria's electoral process has largely improved, looking at their findings from the voting process. What do you make of this assessment?
Yeah, I think must first congratulate myself and congratulate the country for a successful election thus far. For me, as an active player in the electoral process, the process in my unit, in my ward, and local government of Jumu area of Kogi State was seamless. This is the first time we are doing election that in recent years that is cashless. In the past, we've had issue of vote buying, compromise of electoral processes, thuggery, snatching of ballot papers, and so on. So, in my locality where I voted, which is the same local government with Senator Dino Milaye, it was peaceful. The election was conducted in a good atmosphere. The security were very civil. The POs, architects, the INEC staff, and the people were orderly, and everything went on well. And I'm surprised that there is so much outcry during the collation. So I wonder who and what are the motivating factors for what is happening. But for me, I believe that INEC has done well. Nigerians across the country has come out to exercise their franchise, to exercise their voting rights. They've chosen their candidates at various levels. In the first time in the history, we're having about 4 or 5 governors losing senatorial elections. In Kogi, where I voted, by local governments, federal constituency was won by the Senator Ahmed Bola Tinubu. The senator too was APC, the ADC candidate for the House of Reps emerged. So people are well informed. Popular candidate has emerged across board, and I think we must commend INEC for the job done so far. And for us, and for my brother, Milaye, crying at the Collation Center today, if he wanted Atiku to win, he should have delivered his word and local government, where both of us came from. We won him in his ward. We won him in the local government of Ijubu. And I'm surprised that he could go to Collation Center and be dramatizing what is not real. So if you wanted Atiku to win, charity begins at home. You will have won the election for him in his ward and it's his local government of Ijumu area of Kogi State. He couldn't do that. And he came to Abuja and started dramatizing on national television. So for us, and for so many Nigerians, it's a commendable process. We must sustain and protect the integrity of the election thus far, and be eternally vigilant so that anti-democratic forces don't truncate what we have as of today. So for me, by and large, APC has done well across the country. They have done well in terms of providing the environment for us to have a good election. The president has said it on several occasions that he will not interfere with the process, and he has not done that. Even when the APC pressured him to reverse the cash policy of the CBN, the president insisted that he doesn't want money to influence the election. And for the first time, money did not play any role in this election. You can see the candidate of our party being defeated in Lagos and Kano, in some of our strongholds. But we've taken it as part of the electoral process that you cannot always win all. You win some and you lose some. So I think we must all unite behind the national INEC so that we can have a conclusive collation process, so that we can get back to the normal life and get the country working again. So by and large, I think INEC has done well.
Right.
Our party.
So, right, I take your point. And then, of course, another leg of the assessment of, the international community, which of course includes former presidents from within Africa, has been, a call for peace, a call for calm, and for people, as the political climate is, pretty intense right now in Nigeria. Just like Asiwaju Bola Tinubu has also, asked people to also be calm and await the final results from the official body that is INEC.
Yes, in as much as the international community of observers have right to observe elections, we have local observers too. I'm aware that about a reasonable number of local observers addressed the media earlier today, commending the process thus far, commending the security architecture for the election, commending the national INEC staffs and the commission and the whole process. So we cannot, everybody cannot take the same line of position. They have their own reason for saying what they are saying. And the other observers too, that granted the press conference earlier today, in their own wisdom too, feel that INEC has done well. So we must put both parties on the scale of preference so that we can understand where we stand. So for me, for the international community, I welcome their appeal for peace. I also urge them to not to hit the polity. They should help us because they are here to help the process and not be distracted by isolated cases by few people. I think the people talking about non-compliance are just one or two political parties. And we have close to 18 or 19 political parties at the Collation Center. So I think the majority of political parties in Nigeria are on the same train with what INEC is doing as at now. And we all must join hands and make sure that we support INEC to conclude this process.
Yeah, Tosin, as somebody who took part in the electoral process in Kogi State, in what areas would you want to see INEC improve specifically? And then there was also an argument. Somebody sent me a text that you people were able to win because Dino was not physically present. I also want you to throw some light on that.
Dino was around for the election. I'm aware, I saw him, he was in the village, we are from the same local government. He participated in the process and he was roundly defeated. So for anybody to make that statement is not true. For me, I believe that INEC can improve on their logistics in subsequent elections in terms of getting the INEC staff to get the polling unit on time. We found out that we did not start on time in various polling units in my local government of Jumo. So in subsequent election, I think there's need for them to improve on their logistics. But by and large, the BVAS machine worked fantastically. People, if you don't have PVC, you are not allowed to vote, and that's why you saw the low turnout. Many people that had issues with their PVC couldn't vote, and that is why the process ended on time in our locality, and the results were declared. Everybody were given results at the polling units and at the Ward Collation Center and later at the local government collation center. So basically, in terms of getting their staff to various polling unit destination, or the INEC should improve on that in terms of logistics.
All right, let me put you on hold, Mr. Adeyanju, and come back to the studio to get more feedback from BKO and Biodun Shomi. So talking about this crucial stage that we are in, it's of course we know now that it is not just to vote. There is also this period of collation of results and the state level. Of course, there is also an urgency on the part of Nigerians that INEC also gets it right at this stage, isn't it so, BKO?
Yes, I think people are becoming increasingly impatient. They want the winner announced quickly. They simply can't wait. People want change, and many of those who have excitedly exercised their franchise, it is because they are hopeful that a new government will change our situation, improve our economy, and generally get Nigeria working again. So they can't wait to see that winner officially emerge. I don't think that Nigerians can be happy with a situation in which 48 hours after we voted, the winner has still not emerged. I don't think that is a healthy, I don't think it's an ideal situation. Nigerians will want to see the process quickened. And I believe that with the use of technology, that we don't need to be this slow in determining the winner of our election. Tomorrow, today is Tuesday, and we still don't have a winner. And I think only 14 states results have been announced. We don't know whether even tomorrow the process will end. It shouldn't take this long. There are people on social media saying, oh, INEC is wasting time because they want to tweak the results and declare an unlikely person winner. Of course, this is just pure nonsense. INEC has no plan to declare somebody who didn't win the election winner. But because of this delay, it has already bred all kinds of idle talk and outright fake news from people who are already terrified that they are going to lose the election. So INEC can help us and put this whole waiting to an end by quickening the process and getting Nigerians to see who the winner of the election is. I can't wait to see that winner.
This is not the first time. This isn't the first time that Nigerians have had to endure this kind of waiting game.
This one, could eventually become the longest we've had to wait. It could eventually become the longest. The way things are going, it could become the longest. And I don't think that's what Nigerians want to see. They want the process to be faster. They want to know who the winner of the election is. And even I can say that I'm just as impatient as other Nigerians to see a winner emerge. in this election.
All right, Biodun Shomi, what do you make of this waiting game now? And Mr. Festus Okoye, the INEC director for voter information, was talking about the logistics hurdles that states have to go through to ensure that their results come into the National Collation Center. That yes, a part of their duties from the states would be electronically, but there is a point, and that is the point, that at the National Collation Center where the results have to come. They have to come physically to present their results. In terms of how we can improve the system, make it faster, ease the suspense, especially now as BKO is saying that this time around there is something particularly unusual about this waiting game, and how we can eliminate this kind of delays. What would you like to see?
Yeah, I think we're facing the same problem of over-centralization. When you go through the Electoral Section 65, subsection 2, clearly made it very clear, that on 3 scores, the first one is on rejected ballot, that the decision of the returning officer will be final. The second one is on unmarked ballot, and that the decision of the electoral officer will be final. The returning officer will be final. And the third one, is on the results of the election. Whatever the returning officer has announced, subject to other sections, will be final. So what you have is, in each state, you have returning officer. But what we chose to do is to ask all the returning officers to bring the results to Abuja physically to announce. And then you have the chief returning officer who will now announce the final result. And when you look at that process, you ask yourself, why in the same federal elections, why is it okay for the returning officer at the state level to announce the senator that won, or whoever won the Senate seat and the House of Reps, but cannot announce that of the presidency, except you take it to Abuja? That is the major cause of the delay. Otherwise, if INEC, as independent as it is, allows, or the Electoral Act allows, the returning officer, the state returning officer, to announce the result of the presidential election for each state, by now that process will have been concluded. And there wouldn't be this undue delay leading to speculations and leading to politicians, wanting to see whether they can scuttle the result of the election. We should not deceive ourselves. All the political parties that participated in this election know the outcome already. Yes. Because they have agents, polling agents in each polling booth. So they have collated. The delay is giving room for those who are doing some maneuverings, whether we should try and use the court to stop the process from being completed, against even the provisions of the Electoral Act. That is, to shop for a judge who can grant us what we want. And it's the product of delay. We can avoid this delay in future by amending the Electoral Act to allow the returning officer at the state level to announce the result. Once the result has been announced, it's final. Go on, it's section 65, subsection 2.
And where
that
will
is
the
final.
chief
You can
returning
go
officer,
to court, yes.
Right. Where will the chief returning officer come in, in this, likelihood that you are painting, in this picture you are painting?
The chief returning officer would have no choice but to say, well, based on the result announced by the state's returning officer, I have no choice but to pronounce Jide Otitoju as the next president of Nigeria. That's the end of the matter. But you can go to court to challenge infractions. Don't forget that section 64, subsection 6 made provisions for how infractions can be challenged and how the returning officer can deal with it, how the presiding officer should behave, and if in the opinion of the returning officer is correct, what are the things to do that must conform with the law. And if you are not satisfied that they've conformed with the law, or you are still not satisfied, you have a right to go to court. So there's no need for this delay. We only need to twinkle with the system. We have improved so much on it, but we need a little bit more improvement. At least we can see what the delay is causing. It's creating tension in the country. So the earlier INEC address this issue, the better. We know quite all right that when we talk about transmitting results from polling units to Abuja, you cannot get that done throughout the whole country. We do not have adequate capacity, IT capacity to be able to do that. We all knew what happened when the central bank introduced the cash swap and encouraged people to go and do electronic transfer. The system collapsed. The system got overwhelmed in a way that so many people for almost a week could not even manage to transfer money one way or the other. So since we do not have that and we do not have sufficient data coverage, we still do not have 80% data coverage in Nigeria. You're looking at about 45–50%. So what happens in rural areas, in other riverine areas where there are no data coverage? So it's a major problem. It means there will be delay. There will be delay. Whereas that delay will be minimized if the state returning officer is allowed to announce the result, because they only need to go to the state headquarters, local government headquarters, get the voting transmitted, and then the result is announced at the state level. The state returning officer does not need now to come to Abuja and wait until when it's his turn to announce the result. No, that would not be necessary. So it's one way of, while we're looking at improving on our IT backbone, at the same time, we can still look at how to circumvent the problem by making sure that state returning officers are able to announce results.
Right. Tosi Adeoju, do you also agree with this proposition that, Nigerians have endured enough? Because, election year after election year, we get to this point where even after Saturday that polls have been cast, we have to, sit it out. We have to wait for a number of days before, the winner is announced, even though, as have been said, the process at the National Collation Center is ceremonial.
I think I concur that that we need to devise a new method of announcing a result, maybe at the state level, so that we can fast track the whole announcement process. We can see for the parties the third day, and look at what we are. It's very slow, and we are aware there are some democratic tests, different.
All right, Mr. Adeoju, I'm sorry, I will have to interrupt you. We're getting some back-end noise. I'm not sure whether it's from your end, but perhaps we'll try to, check out and sort that out. In the meantime, let me ask, BKO, among the issues that have, arisen in this collation process so far, we've seen opposition parties. We saw the drama that played out today, and it started yesterday, talking about, and there are so many issues that have been raised, but I just wanted to respond to the issue of, IREV, the result, server that people have been, INEC has also, been reported to say that, yes, there have been some, delays, there have been some issues with the portal that have, also contributed to the delay in the collation of results. What's your observation so far in this regard?
Well, I believe that the process can be faster. We just have to look at the process, the entire process, and see how we can ensure that it is faster. Because this delay is breeding unnecessary tension in the country and giving ammunition to anti-democratic forces who sense that they've lost the election and they are looking for a way to scuttle the process so that the winner does not eventually emerge. So INEC has to improve on its processes and the manner in which it announces the winner. There is no reason why after the scope as well as the recs in the states have announced to us the winner in their respective states, they then go to duplicate that effort again in Abuja. We've seen them, some of the announcement of results in the states were shown live on TV. We showed some of those announcements live. Now, the same process gets repeated in Abuja. We watch it again. Nigerians can actually use their time for something else rather than see regs and scopes at from various states regale us with announcement of results twice within 24 hours. I don't think that it makes sense. We've been doing this for years. I think the time has come for us to change this method. And I don't believe that it is something too difficult to achieve. We just have to find a way to make this process faster, and everyone will be happy. I don't think politicians are happy with this waiting game. They want to see an end to this process so that they can move on with their lives, so that Nigerians can know that this election, we've taken it out of our system. But the longer it takes, the greater the tension that it will generate in the hearts of our people. They want to see this process end, and INEC has to really help us to get there quickly.
Let's bring in Bafadan Agundi. He's a chieftain of the All Progressives Congress. He joins us also via Zoom. It's good to have you join us, Bafadan Agundi. Thank you very much for joining us, at this, leg of our discussions. And, your first, assessment now, your first take now, as you try to assess, how far we've come as a nation in handling elections. What's your verdict looking at, the elections this year?
Hello, can you come again?
Yes. What do you make of the elections that we've had this first leg of elections ahead of the governorship elections? How well have we fared as a nation?
Okay. The election went successfully well in Kano, and like you see, the result is already out. We have APC has 517,341. NNPP has 997, while PDP has 131,000. Now, it is what I projected before this meeting, since before the election. I think 2 days to the election, I told you that our difference between APC and PDP will be nothing less than 300,000 above. And I said there's going to be a traditional voting of NNPP because of the candidate coming from Kano, a former governor, former senator. And of course, you know how people do like their own to vote in that respect. They voted for him, which of course is a wasted vote as far as we are concerned. The NNPP vote and that of Labour Party are votes that I think we should thank those presidential candidates, because it's a vote for
Let me interrupt you, Bafadan Agundi. Of course, you know that we are still awaiting official scores from INEC. So we as a station we're kind of bad at the moment. We can't really go deep into the way the results or the votes turned out in Kano State at the moment. But generally, if you would assess, for instance, now voter turnout, Kano has the numbers. That much is obvious. But in terms of what you saw on Saturday in Kano State, how impressed were you in the level of interest at this cycle of elections?
Well, generally there was the turnout was okay, and the level of preparedness of INEC is quite commendable. The election went free and fair. The only place I think INEC needs to improve is with the beavers. The delay in capturing the fingerprint or the picture, it takes 5-10 minutes, whereas they said it's just some few seconds. That makes a lot of people didn't vote. There was, like in my ward, there was a heavy turnout, but I can tell you over 500 to 1,000 people didn't vote because of the delay in capturing their data by the beavers. And that's how they ended up disenfranchised by the INEC, I can see. So as far as I'm concerned, the election was successful. It was good. And I think we are coming of age. Now, Nigeria is coming of age by improving the level of election security with INEC, whereas before, everybody believed there's no much confidence in INEC. It turns out to be election can easily be rigged. So many abnormalities, which I believe they have cut it off seriously now. So I think we need to commend the INEC and the security situation in the country in general, in Kano in particular. The security agencies are so fair. They have kept everywhere calm, and virtually there were no major issues. Of course, you have some few wranglings here and there, which is normal, but a major issue was not observed yet. So I think the election process is okay, it's quite commendable.
Just some hours before the election, there was a clash between the supporters of NNPP and the supporters of your party. Many of us were apprehensive. Many of us thought that the election would be characterized by so much violence because of that clash that happened, I think, the Thursday before the election. Generally,
yes.
were there some security challenges in the course of the election? Were there clashes during the election?
There were no major clashes, like I said, but 2 days to the election, when campaign was to close on Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday, I think, yes, there was a clash. On that very day, the final rally was scheduled by the incumbent government of APC in Kano State, and it happens the presidential candidate is coming into Kano on that very day to do his rally as well. Now the police canceled the campaign by all the parties because they don't want an issue. We insisted on doing our campaign because we write to despite being government in place, but we respect the process of the security agencies. We wrote to them almost a month before that date, acknowledged by the police, and the presidential candidate of NNPP just wrote to them a week to the time when he was planning to come. But still, because the police doesn't want the world to look at them as being unfair, they were so courageous to tell the governor and the government and the party in power that please shelve your campaign and let us tell the NNPP presidential candidate to shelve his campaign as well. But he refused to listen, and the governor listened. I'm very happy that the governor, Abdullahi Umar Ganduja, listened to the advice by the security agencies. But at the end of the day, of course, when we made announcement that the campaign is no longer taking place because the security agencies stopped everyone from campaigning on that very day, the presidential candidates insisted on coming into Kano. Now, on that, a lot of people took to the street to protest that rejection by the NNPP presidential candidate, insisting he must come to Kano. And there was some clashes, of course, yes, which the security agencies do their best to counter it. However, on the election day, it was generally peaceful, but like I said, you cannot stop election wrangling here and there, which is a normal thing, but not anything severe. I heard of a clash in Dugwa, but I don't know the magnitude of that clash yet, but it's generally okay.
Right, and what steps is your party taking to, ensure that, there will be no breakdown of law and order in terms of, post-election violence, especially, of course, the NNPP, the APC, and all the other political parties in Kano State. What assurances are you giving in this regard?
Okay, in the first instance, the governor of the state has made a press statement calling on the people of Kano State to remain calm. That is one. He directed that our 5 emirs do the same thing, and all the ulamas in the state are making that call. And the state is generally peaceful. There is no any sign of violence that is likely to erupt, because the only issue we have is the presidential candidate of NNPP, who is coming a distant 4th position from the collation so far available. So I don't think he has any reason why he should raise an alarm on anything, or his people raise an alarm on anything. We are preparing to join the gubernatorial election in 10 days to come, or 13 days to come. Probably that will be the time when the election will hold, and there may probably be a protest if this one wins or this one doesn't win, because they have localized everything. That's the only target they have of having the governorship of the state, whereas the incumbent government in place also want to retain the power. So for the presidential election, it's like accepted in Kano, because the people have voiced their vote out, and it was allowed peaceful, counted, and sent to the collation centers. So there's no problem. Nobody has objection to the result so far in Kano, and neither the NNPP nor the PDP or the APC. The Labour Party, of course, is not a non-issue in Kano. So I don't think there's going to be any problem so far.
There were issues. Over to you, BK.
Yes. Talking about the Kano politics, the political behavior of our people in Kano, the governorship election is just a matter of days. Given what transpired during this last election, what are your expectations with regards to the impending governorship election? Remember, the candidate of the NNPP was also the candidate of the PDP 4 years ago. What are your expectations, especially given the good performance of the NNPP in the presidential election in Kano?
Okay, you see, Kano is a neighbor state. Hello?
Yes,
we can
carry
hear
on,
you.
please.
Okay. Kano is a neighbor state. I know you know that. And a party from 0 can spring to 100. Like the good example that I told you about, based on sentiment, there were a lot of voting based on sentiment that our son, our brother from Kano is contesting the presidential candidate. Let us support him. Let us vote for him. Without understanding the problem of voting a candidate that cannot come to anywhere close to winning, talking about winning or anything. But they voted, as it happens in the East, also it was a sentimental voting. But when you look at the voting of PDP and that of APC, it's a voting of a nationality. They voted for candidates that have the national spread, irrespective of religious differences or ethnical differences. But in Kano, the voting of NNPP candidate is based on ethnical bias. So that's the only thing. They have given it to him. That's fine, because a lot of people, even in APC, they said, oh, we will vote for him, but we will come back to vote our governorship, Nasiru Gauna, in APC after the election. You can't stop anybody from doing what he thinks is right for him. And I believe you will see it. Like I told you, Jide, that our difference between PDP and APC will not be anything less than 300,000 to 500,000. And my projection was correct. You can see it clearly now. The difference is about 380,000. Now, I'm assuring you, APC will win Kano, inshallah, by the grace of God, looking at the parameters that bring about the voting system in Kano and knowing what people like. If you give them what they want, of course, they give you what you want. We are very civilized in a way. However, that does not stop up from the sentiment voting of son in Kano, Rabi Musa Konkoso. So I assure you, Kano will be retained by APC. Inshallah, we will live to see. We are working very hard, and time will come to tell.
All right, let's put you on hold, Baffa Dan Agundi. Many thanks for speaking with us, thus far. But let me compare some of the things you've said now with, the analysts here with me in the studio. Biodo Shomi, so he spoke, just now about, sentiment voting. And of course, there had been projections, people talking about, what the NNPP candidate would be bringing in on board, especially with the likely disruptions and from the figures that are coming in from Kano State. Now, what do you have to say about the voting pattern in Kano State during this election? Yes,
Kano State is a big state. It has a huge voting population. It's the biggest in the northern part of the country. And when you look at the, even though it's a cosmopolitan area, but there are a lot of other factors that influences the way people vote. If you go to Sabongeri in Kano, for instance, where you have some other extractions, you see religion and ethnic issues playing up in Sabongeri. And that is what accounts for that party's result. So when you look at the dominant parties in Kano, they're basically NNPP and APC. Previously, it used to be PDP, but NNPP came out of PDP. Kwakwanzo, no doubt, is a very strong personality and well-respected in Kano. So the moment he did leave the PDP and form his own NNPP party, he took a lot of the people along with him who traditionally would support the PDP. So that's why the PDP is showing up badly in Kano from all projections. And then when you look at the APC, APC is the governing party within that state. And of course, APC is very strong on ground. But at the end of the day, there are other factors, that come into play. And then, for some reasons, many people in Kano tend to feel that Kwakwanzo is the homeboy, so we have to support our homeboy, and they didn't see any other candidate as belonging to them. So they voted for Kwakwanzo en masse, while the APC is also having a very good showing because of the incumbency factor. Also, there's the Tinubu's factor also, playing up in Kano. particularly backed by Ganduje. And that's why you see APC moving closer to them, because they are the incumbent political party in Kano. But largely, broadly, Kwakanzo is a major force in Kano that you cannot, relegate in your consideration.
All right. Okay, let me go back to, I understand that Tosi Adeyoju has been with us. It's good to know that you are there. But you were saying, talking about, your proposal, so to speak, now to make the collation process, better now that elections, have been concluded in largely many all through the country. But now that we are at this, familiar challenge of, waiting until all the results are collated at the state level and then transmitted to the federal, to Abuja, so to speak. Let's take you back to that point.
Yes, basically, what we're all trying to say is that there's need for a new approach towards collation so that we can make it faster, so that we can reduce the long wait and apprehensions and tension that comes with it. So I think moving forward, subsequently, there's need for that review, so that at least in 24 hours, we should have our results, so that the country can move on, so that people planning anything undemocratic cannot succeed, because there's so much tension in the land, there's so much rumor, there's so much apprehension, there's so much threat to the whole process. So INEC needs to rework it, look inward, compare notes with other countries, advanced countries, and see how they get it done in 24 hours, so that when it's announced from the state level, they just pick up the tallied votes from those states. They don't need to travel manually to come and dump those results here and do a second announcement. I think we need to work on that and move on from there.
Let me come back to the BKO now. Having listened to Bafadan Agundi earlier on about, the elections in Kano State, he talked about, sentiment voting, especially on the homeboy, the homeboy factor now, looking at the NNPP candidate. But, when you look at, the chances of the APC and, of course, the seeming advantage of the NNPP, how do you, view the numbers coming in from Kano?
Yes, the numbers from Kano were not totally unexpected. Kwankwaso has a movement that is probably the largest in the whole of northern Nigeria today. And Kano is his base. Whenever he comes into town, huge crowd usually receives him. So, and Kwankwaso does not really spend money on these people. They just love him. They literally worship him. That's why he's so strong. And the interesting thing about Kano politics is APC dominates elections in the hinterland, while Kwankwaso's NNPP, even when he was in the PDP, would dominate elections in the metropolis. 8 local governments in Kano. Kano has 44 local governments. 8 of those local governments in the metropolis have huge population. So you will find that even in 2019, Kwankwaso was defeated in his local government by the candidate of APC. Yet he so thoroughly dominated elections in the state capital. And that was exactly what happened this time. So usually what happens is he will have built an unassailable lead by performing very well in the state capital, in the metropolis, to the point that you would not, in the many local governments, like 34 local governments, outside of the state capital, no matter how you dominate election in those places, you will still be chasing him. That's what happened this time. They expected it that he would dominate the election in the state capital. That was what happened. They tried to focus on their own area of strength, but the numbers just wouldn't match the lead that Kwankwaso had built up in the state capital. So, and I suspect that even in the governorship election, that is what will happen. Except the APC tries its best to be very competitive in the metropolis. If they are not very competitive and stay close to him, you know, in all of those voting points, then no matter what they do in the hinterland, no matter what they do in the local governments outside of Kano metropolitan, they will still not be able to match him.
And of course, the votes from the metropolis are vital.
These are big numbers, you know, huge voting. So the local governments, the voting strength of the local governments is so huge that you just must find a way to win those local governments. If you cannot win those local governments, especially Nasarawa, Dala, Gwale, in the state capital, there is nothing you can do to defeat this man, because that's where his votes come from, not in the villages. They defeat him all the time outside of Kano metropolis, but he rules the metropolis, and that's where the votes are. So I suspect that I could still follow the same pattern, except the directing minds in the Kano APC can come up with a strategy that will match him effectively in the metropolis and then retain their own strength in the hinterland. If they can do that, then his governorship candidate can be defeated. And it was the same person that competed for the governorship in 2019, Abba Kabir Yusuf, popularly known as Abba Gida Gida. Loved by young women, he loved generally because he's good looking. They wanted him to win, but when he lost the election, there are many people who burst into tears. I know that there will be so much determination to ensure that he wins this time. But the candidate of the APC, Nasiru Gawuna, is a gentleman to the core. He doesn't pick up fights. People like him on account of his gentle nature, and they are convinced that the governor chose the right person. Now, whether the people will be ready to ditch Abba Kabir Yusuf for Gawuna, the deputy governor, to Governor Ganduje, only time will tell. But as I've said earlier, they've got to match Kwankwaso in the city center, in the metropolis. If they can't match him or get very close to him, if they get very close to him, then the numbers from the around 34 local governments outside the state capital can help them to close the gap or even overtake him. But if they don't get close to him, get competitive against him in the state capital, then there's no way they will be able to win that election. That is what they have to do. They tried to catch up with him this last Saturday, but the figures coming from the Kano Metropolitan was just, they were tremendous numbers that they could not match until the end of the election.
And Mr. Danagundi, do you agree with this, assessment of the voting pattern in Kano State at this particular, challenge that saw, the emergence of the NNPP candidates, that, the APC still had a lot of work to do in the Kano metropolis? Mr. Dana, going to kindly unmute. Did you get the question so you can respond?
Yeah, can you come again?
Yes, BKO was talking about, the challenge or the inability of, the APC to get, needed votes in the Kano metropolis. In Kano metropolis, do you agree that, this is, some ground that the APC still has to cover, especially with the next round of elections during about 2 weeks' time?
Okay, his analysis correct. Are you with me?
Yes, please, carry on.
Okay, his analysis are correct. The chunk of the votes come from the metropolitan local government, the 8 metropolitan local government, which any party has to do its best to retain those votes. What probably Jide didn't know about the Abba Kabir Yusuf and Nasir Yusuf Gauna is Kano metropolitan. At the last election of Governor Ganduje and Abba Kabir Yusuf, the difference is that Ganduje is from Kano North, while Abba Kabir Yusuf is from Kano Central and Kano Metropolitan by extension. So the voting was so sentimental because everybody is trying to vote his own. Like I gave you the other analysis of NNPP in Kano. So those within the metropolitan would have almost the 50% of the total vote, registered voters in Kano. They massively vote for Abba Kabir Yusuf at that time because he came from Kano Central. So while Ganduje came from Kano North. But you can see, we look at it, the village and the city voting, it happens like a village and city voting. All the villages voted for Ganduje, while the city people voted for Abba Kabir Yusuf probably because he's from Kano Central. Now, the good thing about it is both two now are from Kano Central and Kano City. So there's not going to be any sentiment voting to say this one is from Kano Central and this one is not. Both are from Kano Central. So what I want to assure you is that we are doing very well in the villages, more than the NNPP, of course. And we will now come to the battleground, that is Kano Metropolitan, Kano Central, to battle there. So the candidate Ganduje picked as his successor is somebody well accepted by the people, a highly credible person and down to earth. So people love him. Of course, you can see what has been happening and the support is enjoying. People in Kano can vote what they decide for themselves, no matter what. Like I said, it's a neighbor state. You can't force them to do what they don't want to. They can vote A today and vote B tomorrow. So what I mean, even in the Kano Metropolitan, where Konkoso came from, one is from Kano Central. Konkoso is from Kano Central. Don't forget that. He's from Kano Central. So people voted for him with that sentiment. That is one. He's from Kano State. And generally people from Kano also voted for him with that sentiment. Now, both of them, like I said, they are from Kano Central and Kano Metropolitan in general. So the battleground is Kano Metropolitan. Both of the candidates will garner a lot of votes there. But I think and I believe we'll do well with the votes from the local governments outside Kano Metropolitan or outside Kano Central. So there's nothing to fear about with regard to the voting system in Kano Metropolis. I'm sure you will understand the difference between the election now with Nasir Yusuf Gauna and Abba Kabir Yusuf, with that of 2019, Abba Kabir Yusuf and Ganduje. Even probably in most of the states, we used to have that voting problem, senatorial district crying that we've never been had a governorship. We need to be given the chance to be governor this time around. So when you give chance to that zone, you see them doing very well, massively voting. We have the same thing here. So God so kind, we have both candidates now from Kano Central. So it is going to be well.
Right. Of course, Kano, just like the rest of the nation, is also in a kind of a waiting game, looking at the eventual announcement of the winner of the presidential election. What is it like for you? How much of suspense, is this, period for you? I'm sure you're familiar with this walk, but do you really think it's healthy for our democracy and, the fact that we need to improve our electoral process, especially in this regard? What do you think?
Can you come again, please?
What do you think about this waiting period now that, the nation is expecting the eventual announcement of the winner of the presidential elections?
Okay. I expect people to respect the rule of law. I expect people to be patient. And I expect the candidate and their supporters to accept the outcome of the election in whatever way it comes for them. Or both of us, we should accept the outcome of the result. If anybody is aggrieved, should emulate from the present President Muhammadu Buhari, a former retired general, who can ignite, fight, war, whatever, but he resort to going to court 1, 2, 3. At the end of the day, God gives it to him. He never insists on election violence after winning. He called for calm, he go to court. So I hope when the election result is announced, anybody who feel the election process didn't go well with him, he is advised to go to court. That will be the best thing, because we are coming of age. Nigeria is getting out of third world country now to a developed country. So that is my advice to the Nigerians generally.
All right, Bafa Dan Agunde, thank you very much for speaking with us on TVC News on our Decision 2023 program. We appreciate your time with us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's return now, to also look at, more developments in Nigeria following the conduct of the presidential election. Yodu, this evening, Nigerians were greeted to two letters. One from former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who has, spoken in his own opinion, asking for the president to intervene and, stop the elections. He, of course, cited some instances of some discrepancies which he felt were, big enough to vitiate the entire polls. But on the other hand, we're having former President Abdulsalami Abubakar, who is also, asking that, Nigerians should also, be patient, at this time. If you have any grounds, go to court, but let INEC finish its job. They've started and, they need to finish. Looking at, the OBJ's standpoint, what do you think?
Yeah, former President Olusegun Obasanjo has had the opportunity to rule Nigeria twice. First time as military head of state and second time as civilian president. He's a well-respected man within the country and also within Africa. But he chose to pitch a tent, with a particular candidate in this very particular election. And that has made his position suspect to partisanship. No matter his intention, whether he meant well or he didn't mean well, the moment you take a partisan position, people are bound, to read minutes into it. His position would not necessarily be considered as a statement coming from a statement because he openly endorsed a particular candidate in this very election. Now, there are problems, no doubt about it, but not major problems with that election as noted by international observers and local observers. There are few allegations of infractions of the electoral rules in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 places, but all are not so significant enough or widespread enough to mar the results of the election. 2, they are not substantial enough, to compel INEC to cancel that election. And what seems to be very clear, in my view, is that the intervention of President Olusegun Obasanjo should not really be welcome in this very particular situation because of the Electoral Act. The Electoral Act is very clear. When you start a process, the process has to be completed. It must lead to a result being announced by the returning officer. And once the result is announced, your INEC still has 7 days within which to review any complaints anyone has. They will review it in line with what has been declared. And then after that, you can resort to the tribunal. There is no point in aborting a baby when the child has been born. What President Obasanjo, former President Obasanjo was asking for was to terminate the process. You want to abort a baby, an election has taken place, people have voted. You cannot cancel that and ask them to go and vote again. So there's no way how that can happen. And what they have not taken into consideration is the resolve of President Buhari, who has made it clear that he does not want to stay a day longer. So appealing to a president who does not want to stay a day longer than his prescribed terms to order another election when you know that that will lead to another extension. And it will create more problems in the country, new tension. And, what happens if the other parties refuse not to participate? Have we thought about that? Why do we want to create problems when this election certainly will produce a winner and it has not been marred by irregularities? Any complaint made by those who contested that election are not sufficient. They are not adequate enough to affect the outcome, And yes, there are issues. They will be dealt with. Some of it borders on criminality, which the police are up to that task. But broadly and largely, most people concluded that this election is free, fair, and very transparent. So therefore, I think President Obasanjo, former President Obasanjo's intervention is based on his own partisan consideration and leanings.
But the former president, Biko, is also talking about the failure of INEC, to transmit results, from the polling units and, other, cadres of collation, and saying that this is a factor, prompting his call for cancellation of elections in those areas.
There is no law that says that results must be transmitted electronically. The Electoral Act permits INEC to use both electronic transmission and manual transmission of results. My feeling is that INEC was scared of the possibility of his portal being hacked. Remember, some arrests were made, I think somewhere in the north. Some individuals who are planning to hack into INEC's election portal. So why would INEC be aware that efforts were being made by hackers to embarrass it and probably enthrone somebody who did not win an election? and still go ahead to permit that kind of hacking to take place. As far as the INEC chairman was concerned, he said all of the results that they have collated and announced emanated from the polling units. That as far as these were results that emanated from the polling units, whatever else that you do is immaterial. So it's like, okay, we post electronically. It's like a bonus. INEC has not done anything wrong by sticking to the results that emanated from those polling units. Results from polling units, as far as INEC is concerned, are the authentic results. Any result that comes outside of the polling unit is not authentic. It is the result from the polling units that INEC has been working with. And when they said that INEC, that there was overvoting in Ekiti, because that was the complaint that Dino made. President Mahmoud said, what is overvoting? And then he proceeded to answer the question, meaning overvoting is where the total number of votes cast is higher than the number of accredited voters. He then said, based on the regular documents signed by the polling agents at the state level on the spreadsheet before me, there was no overvoting in Ekiti State. The total number of accredited voters was 315,058. That is what is on the authentic document. Any other figure that shows anything at variance with this did not emanate from the Commission. At the end of the spreadsheet, we have 3 columns. Total number of valid votes, 308,171. Total number of registered voters, 6,301. Total votes cast, valid and rejected.
600,000. Registered voters, total number of registered voters.
Total votes cast, valid and rejected, 314,472. In his words, the above is actually lower than 315,058.
So there was no
So he said
overvoting.
there was no overvoting. When you compare the total number of votes cast and accredited voters, if there's anything, you may actually say there was undervoting. That is my response to the first issue. If there's any figure different from what I had presented and what came from the manual form completed by the state collation officer from Ekiti State, please discountenance that figure. It didn't emanate from this commission. So it's very clear. He that wants to rubbish INEC's work must actually be well prepared. You have to be able to argue, you have to be able to present your facts. If you are saying that there was overvoting, you must be able to prove it. From what we've seen, the INEC chairman actually proved undervoting. So someone in a fit of rage was making so much noise at the Collation Center about overvoting, but he fell short of proving that there was indeed overvoting. Nigeria does not need this kind of wadakeri at the National Collation Center. We deserve much more than this from some of these politicians. The truth is, 24 hours after the election, every politician worth his salt already knew where the pendulum of victory was swinging. So for some of them at this stage, they're already acting like bad losers. If they succeed in rubbishing the conduct of this election, then some of the gains that we have made will have been eroded. I'm happy to see, for example, the governor contest against a political neophyte and get beaten. That's for the Senate, in the Senate race, and get beaten. We seen the fellow who defeated Obanikoro's son had never been involved in politics.
Almakura lost.
Yes, Almakura, even
in
Almakura
Nasarawa,
lost. His nephew also lost. SDP produced 2 winners in Nasarawa alone.
All right.
So if an election helped us to achieve this kind of milestones, we've never had so many governors lose election in one electoral cycle. Yet you want us to believe that, oh, this whole thing was just because you couldn't win every state, but you won a lot of states.
All right, BK, I'll put you on hold. We'll talk more about, this surprises. And by the way, it's not over. The elections, are still on. Of course, there's still much more in about 2 weeks' time. But then you're watching TVC News. Decision 2023 continues. After this break, we'll return with the news and more analysis. Please stay with us. Welcome back. This is Decision 2023 on TVC News, our special coverage of the presidential and National Assembly elections. We bring you some news updates now. All eyes are still on the National Collation Center, where the Independent National Electoral Commission will announce the next president of Africa's largest economy, who will take over from President Muhammadu Buhari in May. In the meantime, INEC has announced results of 14 states and has now adjourned collation of results to reconvene on Tuesday by 11 a.m.
Tomorrow, proceedings will begin at 11 o'clock. And hopefully, if all the states come in, we'll conclude tomorrow. I would like to thank the party agents, thank Jack from TAF Africa, thank the President of the Nigerian Bar Association, thank the security agencies, national commissioners of the Commission, other officials of the Commission, and the media.
Also, the All Progressives Congress Presidential Campaign Council has reacted to a press statement by former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who called for INEC to announce only results uploaded to IREV. Well, the APC says that no true Democrat must seek an abortion of the process just because he believes the elections aren't going his way. The council added that Asiwaju Tinubu has lost in Lagos State in his southwest region, while Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi have also won elections outside their own regional bases. The statement says, and I quote, "What Obasanjo is subtly calling for in his nefarious statement is a coup against democracy and the Constitution. He should be roundly condemned and severely ignored," end quote. Also, earlier on Monday, the All Progressives Congress had a press briefing to clarify some issues raised at the Collation Center by opposition parties, including the People's Democratic Party and Labour Party. Addressing journalists in Abuja, the advisor, media and communications of the APC's Presidential Campaign Council, Dele Alake, says the APC's presidential candidate is the avatar of democracy, regardless of the results from Lagos State. And he says the lessons drawn from the presidential results in Lagos is that opposition parties should accept defeat in good faith if Bola Tinubu is eventually declared winner of the presidential election. He added that there are credible information that the PDP and the Labour Party are shopping for court cases to scuttle the announcement of the results like June 12, while asking international communities to disregard the distraction of the opposition party and focus on the process.
Those who are bellyaching all around, issuing threats that if they do not win, there will be fire and brimstone and all that. I ask you, how many of them were in the barricades fighting for this democracy? They were not there. So they do not appreciate democracy. They do not understand the dynamics and nuances and the convention of democracy. So they have no stake in this democracy. That's why they can say there will be fire and brimstone. In fact, some obedience have been calling for the return of the military if they are not declared the winner of this election. And that is very, very sad. That will show you that these are not Democrats. And I repeat, because they never took part in the democratic struggle, they never acted in deepening and sustaining this democracy.
Meanwhile, the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Tinubu, has appealed to the people of Lagos State to be calm and avoid any acts that can lead to a breakdown of law and order. In a statement by the Presidential Campaign Council, signed by the Director of Media and Publicity, Bayo Ononuga, Asiwaju Tinubu expressed serious concerns over reports of violence in parts of the state, especially the reported attacks on some traders of Igbo origin. He says the outcome of the presidential election in Lagos shouldn't be a source of provocation, adding that the beauty of democracy is that people have a right to vote for the candidate of their choice. The APC presidential candidate says that as a Democrat, he is bound to accept the outcome of any election, whether favorable or not. Also, Lagos Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu is calling for calm over the reports of friction in some parts of Lagos State. Governor Sanwo-Olu, in a statement, said that violence isn't part of Nigeria's culture and should be condemned. He urged all Lagos residents to go about their businesses without any fear of harassment, adding that the law enforcement agencies have been asked to ensure there is no breakdown of law and order in any part of the state. In other reports now, the Independent National Electoral Commission has suspended collation of presidential election results until Tuesday, February the 28th. And the commission in Anambra State has so far collated 20 out of the 21 local council areas of the state. It now remains Ogwaru local government area in the Anambra North Senatorial District. And TVC News' Bamidele Ajayi has more.
The head of Anambra State 2023 Presidential Election Collation of INEC, Professor Nena Oti, the Vice Chancellor of FUTO, Federal University of Technology Owerri, has suspended collation in Anambra State till tomorrow due to logistical and proximity challenge of Ogwaru to the state capital.
The progress made in the collation of the presidential results for Anambra State. Today, from what the state collation officer announced, we've done 20 out of the 21 local governments.
The commission has been able to collate 20 out of 21 local governments with the hope by tomorrow we'll be able to announce the winner of the exercise. Bamidele Ajayi, TVC News, Oka.
In Kano State, the new Nigerian People's Party has been declared winner of the presidential election in the state. The result was announced by the State Coalition Officer, Professor Lawan Bilbis, shortly after the results across the 44 local government areas which were collated at the INEC headquarters in Kano. The NNPP polled 997,279 votes, while the APC had a total of 517,341 votes. While the PDP polled 131,716 votes, the Labour Party polled 28,513 votes.
APC 517,341. 517,341. LP 28513. 28513. NNPP 997279. 997279. PDP 131716.
You're watching Decision 2023 on TVC News. We have more in a moment. Please stay with us. Thanks a lot for staying with us on TVC News. It's still Decision 2023, where we bring you insightful analysis of the presidential and the National Assembly elections. Of course, we still have our reporters who are bringing in, timely updates on the election so far, and our eyes are still on the collation of results at the states and at the level of the National Collation Center. We've been talking, about, so many scenarios that have played out since the elections were conducted across the country. And a few hours ago, former President Olusegun Obasanjo also, aired his views about the conduct of the elections. And he called for cancellation of the polls, especially in areas where he says, the results were not electronically transmitted. And that's what we have been, discussing over the past couple of minutes before we brought some news reports. But let's go to Mr. Adeoju. Thanks for hanging on with us. APC has, condemned the former president's stance on this matter and says that, his allegations are basically unfounded. What's your take?
Yes, I think at this material time in our nation's history, former president should act like a statesman, and he should help douse tension in the land. and make sure that the process is concluded as soon as possible. So for me, I will appeal to him to act like a father of the nation and statesman that he is, so that nobody hit up the polity. What we want is a united country. We have no other country than Nigeria, and the process has started well, and by the grace of God, it's going to end well. So my appeal to the former president is to remove any sentiments or any preference among the presidential candidates and work for the unity and peace of the nation. So the country has given him so much. It's time for him to give back to the nation by maintaining peace and stability of our democracy at this material time. We believe strongly that the democracy must be sustained, and the only way we can sustain it is through peaceful transition of one government to the other. And I think President Muhammad Buhari has laid the foundation. He has empowered INEC. He has encouraged the reforms we are seeing today in INEC, and all the new electoral acts that were implemented in the last election has further strengthened and make the election accountable to the Nigerian people. For the first time, people's votes are counted, and there's no huge or unnecessary figures that we used to see in the past in this election. We have over 80 million voters, and so far, I'm not sure we'll cross the line of between 15, 16 million votes. So basically, I think we are getting it right. And what the electoral body and the country needs now is all the fathers of the nation to unite behind President Muhammadu Buhari and INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud, so that we can conclude this process and move on as a nation.
Right, all right, thank you very much, Tota Adeoju. But, Biodu Showomi, earlier on, we were talking about, the drama that played out at the National Collation Center today, where we saw a number of opposition parties, including the Labour and the PDP, who, came up and, were addressing the INEC chairman, asking him to suspend the process, and trying to, they were bringing up, the section 65 of the Electoral Act, that had to do with a review of, the process following their complaints of discrepancies, of overvoting and all that. Of course, you must have also followed the response of the INEC chairman, who said in the Ekiti State, and like Jide said, that there was no instance of overvoting. And in any case, this process must be concluded. If you have any issues, and speaking to no one even knew that former President Obasanjo would speak or talk about the elections at the time. He did, but kind of telling everyone that let us finish this process, let INEC finish its job, and if indeed you have any evidence to present to the contrary of what we already have, that will be after this process has been concluded.
Yes, let me first clarify the issue of Section 65. Section 65 of the Electoral Act actually made it very, very clear that at the point of collation, you can challenge results or challenge the documents being collated. The presiding officer can agree or may not agree with you. The returning officer will eventually decide. And if, in the opinion of the returning officer, that result should be admitted, he would actually make his own comments on it and then take note of your objection. A copy will be given to that party agent. And at that stage, he will be allowed to continue and announce the results. After announcing the results, you have the 7 days. INEC will still have 7 days within which you can raise any objection for INEC to review the results of the election. the returning officer to review the results of the election, which he has made. In the case of the presidential election, the collation took place at the state level, not in Abuja. That's where Dino got it wrong. What they did, what they're going to Abuja to do, is to go and announce the results of the election. So if there had been any dispute or any contest, in my view, that should have happened at the stage of collation.
At the state level.
At the state level, before coming to Abuja. So even if they have done that at the state level, Section 65 clearly said that the returning officer shall continue to announce that result. And after that, they have 7 days to present the same observation to INEC to review what has been presented, or after that, you go to the tribunal. So an attempt to come to where the result is being announced, by the returning officer, and trying to get the returning officer to roll the hand of the club backwards, for me, is wrong. And when you actually look at the reactions of Mahmoud Yakubu, the INEC chairman, reacted appropriately. He said, look, what exactly? Tell me, give me one instance. They couldn't. The one they were referring to in Ekiti was not a case of overvoting. It was undervoting. And he was asking for specifics, which they could not even present to him. And those specifics should have happened at the state level anyway, at the state coalition level, not even in Abuja. So the INEC chairman was still, as the chief returning officer, was still considerate. He was still willing to look into their complaints. But there was no... The Electoral Act, Section 65, is very clear. What they need to do is allow the results to be announced, then present whatever they still have to INEC to review. The returning officer will now review it again. He has 7 days under the law to review it. After that, you can only go to the tribunal if he maintains his position. That's what the law says. So the process of announcing results must continue, irrespective of what Dino Melaye and his cohorts thinks, because that's what the law says. And we have to accept the fact that we have to be governed by the rule of law, the electoral process, up to the point of announcing results, and what you should do after have been codified into the Electoral Act. So coming to the place to obstruct what INEC is doing is, for me, is in bad taste, and that shouldn't have happened. We need to grow beyond such behavior.
And despite the opposition parties, expressing their grievances and the response by the INEC chairman, we still saw a walkout by the Labour and the PDP National Party agents. Even though majority of the other opposition parties said they were willing to wait for INEC to conclude the exercise.
And they affirmed their confidence in INEC right there. I'm sure that Professor Yakubu must have been very, very pleased that before his eyes, some of the party agents openly dissociated themselves from the rantings of Dino Melaye and affirmed their belief in the process. That was really reassuring, because why must we had Orubebe in 2015, and now Orubebe's younger brother materialized on the scene, to make so much noise signifying nothing. As I said earlier, this election has witnessed a lot of upsets. Usually, it's just like the FA Cup in England. The FA Cup usually witnesses upsets. That's why people like that competition so much. A team in the third tier can beat one of the best teams in the country. That is the joy of the FA Cup. The joy of this kind of election is for you to not even be able to predict the outcome of an election until the election is over and result announced. We've seen people that we never fancied their chances go on to win in this election. It must be because the process was credible. In the past, some of these governors who have lost senatorial elections will not lose because the process was easy to manipulate. And the idea of beavers now being something that you must compulsorily use, backed by law, well, that was not the case before. That was not the case. The card reader was routinely bypassed. Despite the fact that INEC rule book says you must use the card reader, many of their own staff were not ready to use the card reader. But today, it is part of the law, the 2022 Electoral Act, that you must use the beavers at any point in time. If the beavers malfunctions, the election can be repeated the next day, just so as to be sure that the beavers gets used. And you can always bring in beavers from elsewhere to replace a bad one. All they need to do is within a short time, they will program it, because all those beavers machines are polling center specific. Every polling center has its own beavers machine programmed to function only in that polling center. It's not like you can take it to somewhere else and expect that it will be used there. No.
Right.
So how can we have all of this? How can we have some of the outcomes that we've seen in this election? How can we have a man who never had a governor, who didn't have a governor, winning different states? Yet, all we can do is try to rubbish the process just because some of the results have gone against us. I mean, it's very ridiculous that people can actually degenerate to this level. It's the kind of selfishness that we identified politicians with back in those days. Politicians will lose election and then go on to invite the military to come and take over just because they couldn't live with losing. Now we have a situation in which some of the online rascals are actually calling for military to take over just because the election didn't go their way. I mean, it's just terrible.
Right, and Tosin Adeojo, let me use this opportunity to get your final take. I know we've kept you online and we appreciate your time, but on a final note now, we saw that this Dino Melaye outburst at the National Collation Center also was a major issue that arose at the press conference of the APC's presidential campaign council, where they said that such an approach is tantamount to how the 1993 elections were scuttled. What do you say to that?
Yes, I think Nigeria should not take him serious. If we really wanted Atiku to win, as I've said earlier, we are from the same local government, we are from the same place, we're together.
Tosin Adeojo, are you there? Hello? Perhaps, Biodosho, you may want to respond to that. The APC had a press conference today, and, this Dino Melaye, outburst was, also, showed up at the meeting where they called on him, and indeed the main opposition, that's the PDP, to accept defeat. After all, they say Asiwaju Tinubu had reacted to the results in Lagos State and, had, shown that he was a true Democrat.
Yes, look, Dino's reaction was shocking to me in the sense that this is a very free and fair, transparent process of announcing the results of the winner of just concluded election. Except Dino knew something which is not known to the rest of us and INEC. I don't understand why Dino would behave the way he did. In the first instance, when results of elections are announced, you have a right to dispute it. You can always go back to court. You have 7 days to even challenge it. You can submit new information to INEC, and INEC would have to review their position. If you don't want to do that, or you did that and you were not successful, you can still go to Election Petitions Tribunal. That's exactly what happened in Osun State. In Osun State, the Beavers was not preloaded onto the terminal, and they simply went, Oyetola and his team simply went to INEC and obtained certified copy. And on the basis of the certified copy, they found discrepancies and they went to the tribunal.
All right, Mr. Chowumi, let me just put you on hold. Okay. Tosin is back. Kindly, continue, and let's us have your final take, on.
Earlier, Nigerians should not take Senator Diro serious because he was at home in the village together on Saturday for the election. We are from the same local government. He lost his ward. He lost the local government to us, 11,000 plus to 4,000 plus. And he came to Abuja National Collation Center to dramatize. Such a person should not be taken serious. He's trying to instigate crisis in Nigeria. I concur with the APC media directors that call the security agencies to wade in. We must not allow any selfish individual to truncate our democracy. All men and women of conscience must rise up in defense of our nascent democracy. The election has been won and lost. Anybody that has any feelings, any dispute about the process should approach the tribunal after the final announcement of the collation. So I'm calling on the INEC, the federal government of Nigeria, to rise to the occasion and conclude this thing soonest so that the country can move forward. I also call on the judiciary, not in any frivolous ex parte orders, to truncate or to stop the final collation of the elections. So for me, the person that started this problem should not be taken serious at all because he lost where he should have won for Atiku in the first place. So if you couldn't win your place for him, why come and be querying what happened in Ekiti when even the INEC chairman asked you for proof to dispute what has been read? He couldn't provide the proof. So I just call on Nigerians to be vigilant, to support the process, to support INEC, to support what they are doing, and let's get this thing behind us and let the winner be magnanimous in victory and not be a winner that takes all, and let people feel some sense of belonging. So for me, I appeal for calm. I appeal to all the political gladiators in the country to exercise restraint and make sure that democracy is the best that we have. So any other form of government that anybody is insinuating is not the right thing for the country. And I encourage the international community to stand by us at this material time. So that's my parting shot.
Tosin Adeoju, thank you very much, and best regards. Thanks a lot again for staying with us and talking to us on TVC News.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, decision 2023 continues after this break. Please stay with us. Thank you very much for staying with us on TVC News for more on Decision 2023. And so far, about 14 states, results of these 14 states have been collated and announced at the National Collation Center in Abuja. Of course, one of the big shockers on Monday was the announcement of the figures in Lagos State. And, from those results as released by INEC, the Labour Party won with an almost 10,000 margin. BKO, what went wrong really for the APC? Of course, this is Lagos. This is the turf of, the APC's presidential candidate. And yet we saw how the figures went down.
I think that the APC leaders in Lagos are complacent. They didn't do sufficient mobilization. They must have taken it for granted that Ashwaju will win the election here. And that was really foolhardy of them, because in the last 3 elections, our people from the southeast had been showing their voting strength here in Lagos. Remember, in 2015, they won some seats into the House of Reps as well as the House of Assembly in Lagos. So that should have alerted them to the need to be vigilant, to the need to work hard. But whenever you spoke with them, they just dismissed the election as something that had already been won. Remember, in our interview with Kafila Togbara 2 Fridays ago, one of the questions asked her was that why is it that in Lagos, UAPC members take it for granted that the state is already taken, even before an election? And she spoke like most of them will speak, that look, we don't have any problem in Lagos. We are going to win Lagos. We are going to won Lagos with a good margin and all that. But they should have known that they needed to work really hard. Beyond the fact that the Igbos had become a very formidable voting bloc in this state, there was also the problem of Christian clerics calling on their members not to vote for Ashwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu because of the Muslim ticket. A lot of places where Obi did well, it was this religious sentiment that was deployed. There's a particular pastor with one of the biggest churches in our country speaking in a manner that questions his standing as a pastor, because he is even a standing as a Christian, first and foremost, because he spoke like somebody extremely bitter and like somebody who could even take a life if he had a gun. He was talking about a governor who told people to go and vote for a particular candidate. But we've seen a lot of pastors tell the congregation to vote for particular candidates. So why were you literally running mad because a governor suggested that people should vote for the candidate of his choice? Of course, he did not put a gun to their necks. But as his supporters, they had been telling him, tell us who you want us to vote for. So how was it a crime that the governor eventually said, okay, vote for this individual? But this pastor just got very angry. And I'm like, what's going on? You know, I've talked about identity politics creeping into Nigerian politics in a manner that is disturbing, in a manner that even threatens the unity of our country. But we are seeing clerics doing their best to divide us as a people by insisting, by even threatening their church members. And Muslim clerics are also doing that. We have to admit. They too are saying, you must vote for this particular candidate. It is wrong. It is wrong. Nigerians should be left to choose their leaders. Clerics should not move into the political arena the way we are seeing these guys. Some of them are even coming up with predictions that show that they do not actually hear from God, just deceiving themselves. Because you see a lot of those predictions have actually fallen flat. So if God spoke to you, of course the prediction will come to pass. Dropping the name of God so liberally as these pastors are doing is ridiculous, and they will be ultimately deconstructed if they don't stop this habit of dropping God's name at every opportunity just to make it. No, they are politicians. They should just let us know. They should join a political party. Let's know that they are politicians, but making political statements and then trying to force their members to vote for particular candidates that's not, in my view, how pastors should behave. So this election, beyond the fact that, yes, the Igbos saw Ruby as one of their own and were resolute that he had to be the candidate that they would back, the religious factor was also there. Then the hardship in the land. We can't dismiss the hardship in the land, the impact it has had on this election. Where, For example, the APC candidate had 70% acceptance like 2 months ago. Since the introduction of this ill-fated cash swap policy, the approval rating of the APC candidate had dropped to like 50%. In fact, to me, it's a miracle that in spite of all Nigerians have gone through, some of it designed to make sure that the party does not win, people still chose to support the APC the way they have done. It must be because they are terrified of the possibility of PDP returning to power. Because it's difficult to explain. And it must also be because a good number of them have detached the candidate of the APC, the presidential candidate of the APC, from his party. It must be because a good number of them see in Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu a new broom or somebody who is capable of making good things happen for our country.
So you're saying in essence that ideally this policy alone was enough.
It's enough to make a government. It's enough to make a government lose election. Do you know that in some parts of the north, people are buying petrol at like 380 naira per liter, 350, 380 per liter? You go to a place like Jos, even Maiduguri, it's about 400 naira per liter. The opposition will readily tell them, now look, if you vote for APC again, these problems will get worse. By coming up with this Naira policy that has inflicted unbearable pain on our people, the opposition does not need to campaign so much. All it needs to do is draw attention to the pains that people are going through and ask them, do you want these pains to continue? Or if our people still didn't listen to them and voted for the APC in the manner that they've done, it must be that Asiwaju's decision to quickly try to explain to them that, look, this problem was designed, or let me say, it must be because Nasir El-Rufai and co. quickly stepped out to say, look, this policy is designed to make us lose election. And that's why in the north, they are singing that song, Koda Kudi Koba Kudi Tinubu Zamuzaba. In fact, the musician Rara said, Koda Kudi Ko Free, meaning that even if you are not going to give us a dime, we are ready to vote for Tinubu. So that way, Asiwaju has played the victim very well. So the people, some of the people now say, oh, you want to stop him, that's why you are inflicting this pain on us. Okay, we will then go ahead and vote for him. So that must have, because I struggle to explain why, in spite of this pain, the party even made new gains. One in territories where some weeks back you could never imagine that they would win.
All right.
Especially states like Benue. You know?
Right.
They won in places where we thought they could not win.
All right. Let me put you on hold now.
And did very well in like Akwa Ibom.
Okay.
In fact, since 1999, APC had never done as well as they've done this year in Akwa Ibom, where the ruling party only beat the APC with 54,000 votes. They've never come close to performing that well in Akwa Ibom, a state that you could call a one-party state and all that. So,
the PDP
despite all of the
factor.
problems.
But Biodun, to what extent do you agree with BKO's assessment of APC's performance so far, especially in the homestead of its presidential candidate?
Yeah, when you look at the issues dispassionately, you would ask yourself that it must have taken a miracle for the APC to have the kind of figures they have, to still remain, the leading contender, the party to beat. Because for some strange reasons, we had a ruling party coming up with unpopular policies that inflicted hardship on the people in terms of people having access to their funds in the banks. And then for about 4 months, we had petroleum shortages, in the filling stations, the longest ever in our history, and that inflicted so much hardships on people, and people were very, very upset about it. And that should have rubbed negatively, on the candidate. It has some impact on why the APC, why Labour Party won Lagos. There's some element of that. People who are angry about we don't have access to our cash. There's fuel scarcity persisted for some time. But we also have some other issues, that came into play. Like Jide correctly mentioned, you have the role of the pastors playing up religion. It was so bad that two pastors based in Oregon here had to load release cash, because they had access to cash. They didn't take the money to the bank. They now reserve the cash for elections. People were paid 20,000 naira, and that became very, very obvious. The opposition had cash. The ruling party didn't have. At a point in Ekwe, it was so bad that people were wondering where did they get the new notes from. Money was moved in one way or the other to induce voters. But it was strictly based on their own religious disposition to the whole matter. They're upset about Muslim tickets at federal level. The story might be different when it comes to governorship because Babajide Sanwo-Olu himself is a Christian. So you might not have all the factors that worked against APC now working against Sanwo-Olu. And another major issue in the whole equation, it's basically the response of the APC leadership and even Tinubu himself. I think the media team did a very beautiful job. They got the strategy right. So they were able to quickly help the voters to separate the candidate and his agenda, from the agenda creating hardships for the people. That's on the issue of the money, the cash swap. They were quickly able to put a distance in between that. And no matter how you look at it, you must thank El-Rufai for that. Because he was quite very articulate about it. Ganduje, they all spoke about it and said, look, this is not about our candidate. This is about what the government is doing, which we don't agree with. And they actually put a distance between the candidate and the policy. So because of that, that had some form of votes for some form of sympathy, for the APC candidate, because he had no control over the process. He could not order the CBN governor not to do it or to do it. And the reason for doing it in any case does not make sense to anybody. You want to stop vote buying. How is that the business of CBN? What is the business of CBN with elections? It's INEC and the security services that have the problem, nothing to do with CBN. And in any case, why are people depositing 10,000 naira? They cannot get their 10,000 naira back if it is indeed cash swap. So there were quite a lot of issues that came out of it. The way APC managed it, I'm not saying government, the way the party managed it has helped a bit. Otherwise, it would have been a big disaster if they didn't put a distance between that government policy and the party. And I think they did that very well, and their media team did a very good job of it.
And on the other hand, in the rest of the Southwest BKO, Oyo, for example, a PDP state, we saw how the votes went down. Of course, the APC emerged victorious, as well as in Ekiti State. In Oshun didn't go the way of the APC, but in Ondo and Ekiti, as well as in Ogun State, it was victory for the APC. Even despite this controversies.
Yes. For example, in Oyo State, all the candidates were already rooting for Asiwaju, even candidates of rival parties. Look at Adebayo Adelabu Kelemes. He's the governorship candidate of our Accord Party. But he was rooting for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, despite that they belong to different parties now. Look at the governor, Makinde. He's part of the G5 governors. He said flatly that he would not support the candidate of his own party because his party refused to honor the agreement on zoning, which is even enshrined in the constitution of the party. So that was the point of departure for him. And he didn't hide the fact that he would like to work for Asiwaju's victory. He even delivered his word to Asiwaju. And then, even within the APC, there are those who would not want to see the candidate of the APC win the governorship election in Oyo State. But a good number of those people would still prefer to work for Tinubu's presidential ambition. People like the famous lawyer, Neyi Akintola, they don't work with the candidate of their party in Oyo State because they felt that he get crashed into the party and took away what normally should have come to them. So they are displeased, but they would rather work for Asiwaju. So in the state, the big politicians had already made up their minds that Asiwaju Tinubu will be their choice. People like Ladoja, even the Magajis. The Magajis are very influential in Ibadan. For the first time, they made up their minds, this is the person that will support. So Asiwaju already had tremendous support from across board in the state. So I knew that he would win Oyo State. You look at Ondo State, for the first time, all of the groups that used to quarrel amongst themselves, all the party leaders, APC leaders in Ondo State, this time around, they are all singing from the same hymn book. People like Kekemeke, people like Olushola Oke. For the first time, they are together. Even Alasho Adura, who went against Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu at some point, all of them are supporting Asiwaju now. And the governor, remember the governor used to be Asiwaju's adversary. All of them today are working for Asiwaju. So the divisions that used to take their votes away was no longer there. They were just focused on Asiwaju's presidency. So victory was delivered it was very predictable. victory came their way. Even some of the other candidates of rival parties, some of them elected in their hearts that this is the person who will back. So that was what happened. Is something similar in Ogun State. I recall during the punditry, I said all the former governors of Ogun State alive, they are all now in the same party. The one that is not alive, Bisi Onabanjo, his daughter is also in APC now. So all the former governors, they are all in APC. Deputy governor, all in APC. Even Amosun, that does not want to see the current governor win, get a second term, is backing Asiwaju. So in such a situation, Asiwaju's victory was assured. But that was not what we saw in Oyo State, in Osun State. In Osun, the current governor is fighting for his political life. He lost in the tribunal. The last thing we want to see is to see Asiwaju become president, because he thinks that will accelerate his departure from that exalted office. So he will be doing his best to ensure that Asiwaju doesn't win. So they employed all manner of tactics, including force, focusing on the hinterland, just to ensure that the APC never did well in the state, and they were able to win all these senatorial seats, one of the House of Rep seats. So at the end of the day, Asiwaju was defeated in the state, though the gap was not wide, but Asiwaju was defeated. So for every political behavior, there are explanations to why the people, there are explanations of why the people demonstrated the political behaviors that led to either victory or defeat.
Right, and Biodo Showumi, and still on the Lagos, many people are particularly interested in what happens now for the governorship election for Oyo State now that Seyi Makinde is also eyeing another, is also seeking another term, of course, and we've seen how the results panned out in Oyo, and here in Lagos there's also another crucial election this time around, governorship. And for the APC now bouncing back, so to speak, what do you think when you look at the dynamics in these two states?
Yeah, when Jide was making a contribution earlier, I think he spoke about, if I'm correct, about the fact that the factors that actually worked against Asiwaju Tinubu in Lagos.
The way you said the party itself.
The party itself and the complacency of the party officials. If I'm correct,
right.
I think he said something like that.
Do you agree?
Yes, I agree with him, because this will be a wake-up call, for all the party leaders. It's good that this happened during the presidential. They can still wake up and look at how to mobilize the members of the party to ensure that Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu is returned back to office, because he has done very, very well. We shouldn't have a situation which we have in Etiosa. That should not be the norm in any democracy, where an unknown quantity, a trader, an unknown quantity, whose poster was only posted on the Osborne foreshore wall, defeated Obanikoro, not only him, including a popular musician called Banky W.
But on the other hand, this personality was also said to have been, is popular, he's said to be popular, and that went around doing door-to-door campaigns and all that. But that part of you saying it's a wake-up call for the APC. You know, I wanted to also, you know, address that.
He
bear
was
that
not,
in mind.
look, he was not known, not popular at all. Look, I can tell you, if you mention Banky W, we know who he is.
Yes.
If you mention Obanikoro, we know who he is. Who is this guy? Thaddeus or something? That's his name. So the fact of the matter is, he won the election. No doubt about that. He won it fair and square due to several factors which we have highlighted here. But when it comes to the governorship, I think the story will be different. We should expect people to take a lot of factors into consideration. One, apart from the party waking up from its deep slumber, what I mean by the party is the party officials waking up from their deep slumber, their complacency, assuming that, oh yes, we'll win the election no matter what happens. They would have to wake up and play their role. You're likely going to have Sanwo-Olu, you know, not being a major problem in the sense that for the churches, because Sanwo-Olu himself is a Christian, so they probably will not have the same tough position. They won't take the same tough position as they took against Asiwaju Tinubu, you know, against him. Then other factors will also come in. Sanwo-Olu's track record. He's done very well in Lagos, and some people call him action governor or whatever they call him. But no matter how you look at it, the man has done very well. He's been able to move Lagos forward. We've seen almost the completion of the bridge in Naija. Now we've seen what has happened with the Blue Rail line and all that. The commencement of signing of contract for the building of another airport in Lekki. And we're also talking about the third mainland bridge. So come on, give it to him. And he's also done a lot of road work. So I think reasonably, those factors should also work in Sanwo-Olu's favor. His own track record on his own. And of course, you also have the likelihood, if for instance Tinubu wins the election, that there's what they call bandwagon effect. So that is also likely going to happen, and that will depress the opposition to the governor. So a lot of other factors will come in and shape the governorship differently from the presidential election.
Right. But quickly for the Oyo State, you know, case now, what do you foresee will happen now?
In the case of Oyo State, it's a very interesting and very delicate one, in the sense that they all supported Asiwaju, including Adelabu of the Accord Party, the governor, Seyi Makinde. Right. You know, virtually all the gladiators supported Tinubu, to the extent that even the PDP lost all the senatorial seats in the state. They paid a heavy price for supporting Tinubu. Yes, the issue is what would happen in governorship. You might have a different situation. There will be consideration by some of those voters, you know, for Makinde. They might want to give him some credit to say, look, you've supported, you've done what we wanted, so we're going to have to reward you. There's the risk of that. There's also the risk, given the fact that, to some extent, a major pillar in APC left and went to Accord, which is Adelabu. He was the candidate of the party in 2019 election. So he left the party with his supporters. That's a chunk of APC in Oyo State to Accord party. So how that will play out, we don't know, because that may affect the APC gubernatorial candidate's chances. Or whether it won't, we don't know. It remains to be seen.
It does.
Yeah, but I think there will be some impact somehow. So, and we don't know, there may also be a consensus on the part of all the gubernatorial candidates to reward Seyi Makinde by supporting him. So there are a lot of possibilities out there. What is not clear is, if we know Oyo State for what it is, it's a tough battle on his own to get a second term.
Absolutely.
It's only Ajimobi that's been able to...
Yes, he broke the jinx, right?
Yes, he broke the jinx, and for Makinde to repeat it will be another feat, you know, which is not impossible, but it's also very daunting.
All right. Let me compare your you know, prediction, so to speak, with that of BKO. Lagos and or your states now on your radar, what are you seeing, at the governorship or ahead of the governorship election?
No, I expect Shea Makinde to win. I expect him to win. There are some conditions that should help him to win. We talked about that in
the pundit segment.
I think that he could be rewarded for the big political risk that he has taken to support Asiwaju in the way that he has done. I see a lot of APC supporters vote for him for the support that he has given Asiwaju. I also think that as an incumbent, he has an advantage. But Oyo is such a complex place. They don't like giving the governor a second term. Asiwaju, Ajimobi, former governor Ajimobi did this. I know it will be tough for Sheyi, but I still think he's going to win. Talking about Sanwo-Olu, Mr. Selibu, as he's called, he has to work very hard. A lot of the APC supporters complained that no effort was even made to mobilize them, for election day. No effort. There are parties who had begun doing door-to-door campaigns. APC didn't do major statewide campaigns here. Governor Akeredolu initiated senatorial campaigns from senatorial zone to senatorial zone. Then he had major rallies in the state capital. So he wasn't taking the election lightly. He was determined to deliver Asiwaju and Tinubu, and he showed in the way he worked hard. For a governor to be moving from senatorial zone to senatorial zone, and he had big crowds always waiting for him wherever he went. That was an early pointer to me that they will win Ondo. Now, within the short time that we have between now and that governorship election, the APC leaders here must show great energy. They must be ready to campaign vigorously. They must enlist the support of young people. A lot of the people who are elders and leaders of the party, they are actually spent. Some of them do not really do anything. They've just been rewarded with leadership and with membership of the Governor's Advisory Council. But they are disconnected from their people. There are many people, many APC leaders, some of them are appointees of government who are completely detached from the people. So in an election year, they will make you pay if you are detached from them. This is the truth. Some of them, even when they go to their areas, they behave like, look, I don't want to have anything to do with you. They snub the people, and when you do that, they would like to make you pay. And the only way they can avenge that is to not vote for you on election day. So the APC can still win the governorship election because the incumbency factor is there, but they have to work harder. In a season when people are very hungry, they are hungry, you have to mobilize them. You have to go to meet them directly and get them to realize that you value them, that you take them seriously. I can say that in the days and weeks leading to this election, APC leaders in Lagos State never took the voters seriously. I spoke with even some of them last week. You could see the complacency was there. You know, we asked Kafila Togbara this question that how come the leaders of your party assume that victory is already assured? Because they were not taking concrete steps to reach the people and get the people to vote for them. Why should the votes recorded for Ashwaju at his polling station be just 35 or so? How can the presidential candidate vote somewhere and record such low number of votes? That people should have been mobilized even to go to that polling station that day to vote, so that the quantum of votes going to him will further energize the people. But 35 votes, whereas where President Buhari voted, more than 500 votes went to him. PDP got just 3 votes. So the votes that Ashwaju got on that day was too low. They didn't do enough mobilization. The future of the APC in Lagos rests in young people. The leaders who are obviously spent, who are disconnected from young people, this is a time to begin to replace some of them, because you have to connect with these young people, let them realize that the party values them. Otherwise, you see a good number of them will join the rival parties where they will be accepted, and you will continue to lose the votes of young people. And we've seen with the election in Osun, and even this election, we've seen a lot more young people getting registered and exercising their franchise. It had never been like that. But I think the NSAS thing, the energy from the NSAS protest propelled many young people to get registered and to be part of this process. And because they are hungry, the Labour Party harvested their anger, and this anger was turned against the ruling party. No doubt about it, yes. A lot of the voting was largely propelled by ethnicity, but there were still many young people, a lot of them Yorubas, who voted for the Labour Party without even knowing who their candidates were. So
to support Jide on one score about the party leadership, failure to mobilize appropriately. Look, in many polling booths, people were on the queue as early as 6:30 a.m. in Lagos. And by 10, in many places, you are yet to have the electoral materials and INEC officials. And they can't even afford to buy water because there is no cash to buy bottled water or pure water. And at a point, many people were forced to go back home. That was no one to give, even pure water would have been a succor to
at that time
enable people to stay so that they can vote. But so some people went back home only not to return to come and vote.
That was why the was low.
The
turnout was very low.
Right.
Yes.
Some people even said that the APC, just like you said, also lost some numbers, as a result of that.
But in a very close contest like that, every
vote
counts.
Yeah. Every vote.
It
It was a very close race. So you can imagine if they had those people, those who went back home.
They didn't bother to come back.
Party leaders should have been there to address them. To say, look, let's exercise our franchise. Don't go. Let's be patient. This exercise will soon be over. If you can't do that, and you expect the people to vote for you, then you are on a long thing.
All right. Well, it was a mixed grill, also for the Labour Party, the APC, the PDP, across the other states. But we don't really have that much time for that. Let's quickly look at, some of the senatorial and the House of Representatives elections, talking about the emergence of winners. Still talking about Lagos here, for instance, the All Progressives Congress Lagos West senatorial candidate, that's former Deputy Governor Idiat Adebule, was declared winner of the Lagos West Senatorial District. And INEC's Senatorial District Collation Officer, Professor Solomon Akimboye, declared the former Lagos State Deputy Governor winner, having scored the highest number of votes. And she polled 361,296 votes to defeat the People's Democratic Party's serial contestant, Segun Adewale, who polled 248,653 votes.
Hereby certify that I am the returning officer for the 2023 Lagos West Senatorial District election. The election held on the 25th day of February 2023. That Adebule Biat Oluranti of APC, having satisfied the requirements of the law, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected.
And also, the Independent National Electoral Commission declared Senator Adetokunbo Abiru of the All Progressives Congress as winner of the Lagos East senatorial election. The results declared by INEC's returning officer for the Lagos East senatorial election, Professor Simon Adebayo Oladipo, showed that Senator Abiru polled 178,646 votes to defeat his closest rival from the People's Democratic Party.
Having satisfied the requirements of the law, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected. Thank you, and God bless you. Dated this 27th day of February 2023.
And away from Lagos, Benue State Governor Samuel Otom lost his senatorial bid to the APC's candidate Titus Zam. INEC's returning officer Rufus Shato announced that the governor was defeated by Titus Zam, who polled a total of 143,151 votes to beat Governor Otom of the PDP, who polled 106,882 votes. Interesting results there, BKO. You talked about, you were speaking earlier about, the emergence of the winner, of how Benue State also, aided Asiwaju Tinubu's presidential bid. And, now we also see, even though Benue State's governor, had already indicated his support for the Labour Party's presidential candidate, he lost in his own bid.
Yes, I don't think the people generally were in agreement with him that the Labour Party candidate was the best he could have chosen. And to a great extent, there was rebellion. Yes, Asiwaju won by just 2,000 votes, but was it 2,000 votes or even less than that? No. Even though Asiwaju won narrowly, it was clear that the governor's people didn't want the candidate of the Labour Party, because from nowhere, APC got the kind of votes that I did not expect from Benue State. Don't forget, one of the pastors swearing over the current political realities in our country. He's from Benue State and had been campaigning, even to his own people, that they should not have anything to do with this party. Yet, Asiwaju Ahmed Tinubu was able to win that state. It's a remarkable achievement, and the candidate of the APC in Benue State is very strong. There's a movement in that state, around his candidature, and these are early signs that he could be the next governor of the state, because I believe that a lot of those numbers for Asiwaju were down to him and Senator Akume, who remains a very strong politician from that state. So I think part of the rebellion also crystallized in the loss that
his own senatorial
yes, in the loss of his
ambition.
own yes. I think that the people showed their anger. We can't talk about some of the reasons for why the people showed their anger for obvious reasons, but they clearly didn't want the person that the governor elected to support. Clearly, otherwise he would easily have won the election, because APC was not, before the election, APC was not in the reckoning at all. It was a PDP state, and everyone was thinking that even the PDP would be able to win. But the governor lost. It's not there are other governors that lost senatorial elections. Yes, it's a very crazy political season that we are in now. All kinds of Cross River, for example. We've had Governor Yade say that everyone is now supporting APC in Cross River, but the results coming from that place do not support that assertion. The people are still largely PDP.
PDP, right.
And perhaps the presence of people like Lely Moke, people like Donald Duke, because Donald Duke's faction is actually supported by Nyesom Wike, and that faction produced the governorship candidate of the party, despite the best interests or the best efforts of Lely Moke's group. Wike had been financing the PDP in Cross River State since Ayade defected. Since Ayade, the governor, defected to the APC. So in the end, the governorship, his faction produced the governorship candidate. Now they've done very well in this election, and for the Cross River North senatorial contest, Senator Jarigbe, who is clearly the most popular politician in Cross River today, defeated the governor. So exactly the way I had predicted it, that with the governor having to go against this guy because he's so loved in the state, I knew the governor didn't stand a chance. So that's what we want to see, not the sort of election that precludes the the kind of election that ensures that a big man is never embarrassed. We don't want to see that. Let the Lilliputian embarrass a big man. That's democracy. It shows that the election is free and fair. If a governor with all the resources at his disposal is unable to defeat somebody who has not got even a fraction of the resources at the disposal of the governor, it shows that the election was free and fair, and that's why I'm ashamed of people trying to rubbish the same election by making claims that they cannot defend.
And for you now, when you look at, how this upsets, and, surprise victories, so to speak, now would also enhance, deliverables for citizens. They voted, they've had the will of the people, is of course paramount. But, when you look at the impact of this, of these scenarios, what's your take?
Yeah, well, with the upset, that's good for democracy. It's when results are easily predictable, that is not, that can undermine democracy. One of the interesting part of voting is that you don't know people's mind. I only know my own mind. And by the time people finish voting, the results will have to be collated and announced. And that is when you actually know the people's mind, whether they are for you or they're against you. And it's one of the beauty of democracy in a way that people are able to exercise their right without feeling intimidated by anybody, since it's going to be, you're going to vote in secret anyway. Yeah. Now, in relation to Benue, for me, it came as a surprise. I wasn't expecting Autumn to lose. I was also expecting Labour Party to win and expecting a good showing from APC, but not to the point of winning. The reason is clear. My thoughts seems to be driven by the fact that Labour Party was picking the candidates, these voters of PDP. And with Autumn's backing, that will accelerate, and then you're likely going to have Labour Party winning, Peter Obi winning Benue. And APC will have a good showing because George Akume still remains a very powerful, influential figure in Benue, and he has been so consistent, being a consistent supporter of Asiwaju Tinubu, and he did so much work to try and help the APC, on his own. So given that situation, I was expecting a PDP meltdown, a Labour victory, given Autumn's influence, incumbency power, and some other issues, and even given religious factor. Absolutely. And then APC coming out with a good showing, but not to the point of winning. So that was what I was expecting. So the surprise actually lies in Autumn himself losing his senatorial beat, because I was thinking it would be a major influence in Labour's victory, but it turned out to be the other way around, and Autumn lost his seat. So there are lessons to learn. It seems the people are not with him. It's one thing for leaders to think you are leading your people. It's another thing for the people to accept that you are leading them. So there are two different things. So Autumn thought he was leading the people in the right direction, and he had their full backing and support. Unfortunately, the people felt, no, we're not going to go down that lane with you. You're on your own. So that is where Autumn found himself. So at a point, he got disconnected, from the voters, and that's what explained that situation. It's also a lesson for other leaders to ensure that when you say you are a war generalissimo, make sure you have your soldiers right behind you. Don't continue and then realize that your soldiers are not backing you. I think that's the lesson in that respect. So we've had some, what do they call it? Joseph, killing some Goliaths in this very election. But that's good for democracy.
And the Lagos, arm of the Senate now has a new entrant in the person of, can I call her Senator Idiat Adebule now, who will be taking over from Senator Olamileko, who also, interestingly, was victorious in his own bid in Ogun State. Also, Senator Abiru as well, also is assured of a second term as senator.
Yes, and thankfully the Labour Party didn't field candidates in these elections. They had to
You say thankfully.
contest, yeah, because it would have been embarrassing, given the way they performed in this last election. You can bet that those positions will have been taken. Honestly, you can bet that these guys will not return. So where you see Gbajabiamila re-elected, they had to contest against the PDP, and the PDP was already terribly weakened in Lagos. Today, the PDP is like a shell of what it used to be, because the people who are now with Labour Party were largely PDP supporters. You know, if you look at the 2019 election, the margin between the PDP and the APC was not that large. But today, look at the margin. It's like the PDP never took part in this election, you know, because they were pushed to distant third, far away from the first two.
I'm not even sure they made 25%.
No, I'm not even sure they made 10%. It was that
really?
bad, yes. It was that bad. If you look at in some cases, where you are seeing Labour Party scoring 55%, they will be scoring 55,000, they will be scoring 3,000. So the PDP literally did not exist in this election. I'm sure that even the governorship election will be like that. The PDP has lost ground so much, and the people used to vote for them. It's obvious that they are now voting for the Labour Party. So that's why it looks like the party has become very, very weak, very unpopular in Lagos. So Faleke had to contest against a PDP candidate. PDP offered little or no fight. Look at where these ones were scoring 572,000. That's what APC scored in second place. They scored 75,000. Look at the difference. For 500, look at the gap even before the party that came second. 572,000 to 75,000.
And they didn't score 10%.
Yes.
Right.
It was that bad. Whereas only less than 10,000 actually separated the first
the Labour Party and the
second.
APC.
Yes. It shows that the governorship election will be very, very keenly contested too. And this is encouraging for the APC. It means that if they get their acts right and they double up their capacity to mobilize, they stand a good chance. So Sanwo-Olu has to be more aggressive. Look at how Wike mobilizes support in the state. I mean, politics is not for gentlemen. You have to be aggressive. But it's too gentlemanly. Some were complaining that he did not even do rallies here. To do the kind of rallies that other governors were doing in their state. That they didn't see Sanwo-Olu do such rallies here. And I can't remember too that there was a major rally organized by him, not the ones that the candidate that I showed you that maybe rally along senatorial lines or the sort of rallies that the governor of Ondo State was organizing. I can't remember that Sanwo-Olu did that here. And it would have been a good thing to have him do those rallies with maybe there are other contestants on the podium with him, you know, advertising those guys and also reminding the voter that, look, I'm your governor. Right. I want you to vote for me. I want to return as your governor. If he didn't do that, then also guilty of complacency. Well, the democracy, as Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu said, is not served a la carte. The people want to be reassured. If you didn't do that, and you are thinking that, look, whatever happens, they are going to vote for you. I have said before on this angle that I've seen governors who worked for the people, yet they were not re-elected. Yet they were not re-elected. You must get your politics right. You must push hard. It doesn't matter if you performed. These days, other factors determine who. Yes.
Right.
Where ethnicity, where religious bigotry takes over, people are not going to think of the achievements that you recorded. But those are stronger factors than whether a governor built roads, this and that. And realizing what they are up against now, Governor Sanwo-Olu has to get really aggressive, and we have to begin to see that within the next 2-3 days.
So we hope to see another wave, another style of politics now.
Yes,
for
reach
the
out to the people, get
Lagos.
down to brass tacks, not imagine that whatever happens, they are going to vote for you. No, that doesn't work anymore.
Right, now talking about the APC's exploits, Yayi's political calculation paid off for him as he switched to Ogun State. When you look at, what Idias Adebole had going for her to defeat Aeroland, the PDP's Segun Adewale, who had been, contesting, over and over and over again. How much of a surprise did that meet you?
Well, again, I'm not surprised in relation to that. Aeroland at a point left Lagos and went to Ekiti State to contest for the governorship. At that point in time, he got disconnected from his followers. Other politicians grabbed the followers. So he came back after a failed adventure, wanting to continue from where he stopped. It doesn't work like that. So he had just learned his own lessons. So Adebole defeated Aeroland comfortably. And I'm sure he wasn't expecting that. He thought it was a continuation of his popularity.
A lot of us
talking about the grassroots.
He used to be very competitive.
Right.
Oh yes, it was always a tough battle
to
with
defeat him.
With
Even
Yayi.
with Yayi.
Even with Yayi to defeat him. So, but the moment he left and then went back to Ekiti, and that spoiled the whole thing for him. And when you look at Yayi, on the other hand, at the point Yayi left, went to Ogun, met a stiff resistance from Amosun.
Indeed.
He came back, rebuilt, but he remained in touch with his base. And then he went back, he sustained the base. He didn't disband his followers. He went back in, and then he has succeeded. He's quite very popular within his own senatorial district. So he has succeeded. So I think that's the difference between both of them. Aeroland disconnected with his supporters here, whereas Yayi sustained his own support base when he came back.
Able to manage both.
Yes, he was able to manage it effectively, unlike Aeroland.
And some people have also said that perhaps APC's inability to take Alimosho was partly due to the absence of Yayi. Because Yayi had done elections repeatedly in that area and won. Some people felt that if Yayi had actually been in the race, that they wouldn't have lost Alimosho, because the loss of Alimosho is still a shock to me. Because APC had always reaped bountifully from Alimosho. Even when the election is not going fine, people patiently wait for the votes from Alimosho to come, and the votes will be the difference maker. But in this case, they lost Alimosho too, and the loss of Alimosho was particularly painful because it came at the twilight of the race itself.
Indeed.
Yes,
Indeed.
there were 2 local governments left.
Indeed.
Mushin had come in earlier, but there were some irregularities that they told them to go and fix.
Yes.
And then Alimosho was the last one. So once I heard that they lost in Alimosho, I knew that they had grounds to make up. So they needed Alimosho to give them the kind of vote that could overturn the lead that the PDP, that the Labour Party had achieved. But by losing Limosho, it foreclosed the possibility of catching up.
Must have been the
because they
last,
were chasing, almost from the beginning, they were chasing the Labour Party. So we were thinking that when the result from Alimosho comes,
to balance,
it will help them to catch up. But they lost Alimosho, so they foreclosed the possibility of catching up with the Labour Party.
Well, but have you thought about? I
do
thought.
You agree?
Yeah. Basically, he's right, but I'm thinking about why did APC lose Alimosho? One, is it because Yayi was not in the race in Alimosho now, or because he has moved to Ogun, or because Labour did something different?
Right.
Oh, I think that, yes, the demographics show a huge Igbo and South-South, huge population of Igbo and people from the South-South. You know, from Shasha all the way down. There are so many of them living in that area. But the presence, Yayi is very generous. His presence on election day, especially if he was on the ballot, would certainly, because they lost that place by a narrow margin.
I think it's even reflected in the eventual figures. That's about less than 10,000. It's still reflected in the final figures.
So they lost Alimosho by a very narrow margin. So you can imagine if he was present, definitely they would have taken Alimosho.
I think it's more or less...
Much more than that?
Yes, I think it's more or less people's anger over their inability to access their cash in the bank.
Well, it's a factor, of course.
Because if you go further into Alimosho, they are more rural. They are more rural than the mainland. Go towards Ayobo and other communities.
Yes.
You will see the extent of suffering, the embarrassment. They can't even afford, to buy pure
and every
water,
election year, they always make that point known. They always, yes, sir. They also make that point known. That we are the largest, population in Lagos State, and
2 million.
We're the largest. We're the biggest, and we are also the most ignored when they now said, okay, come to us, let us have, a more feel of governance.
They are now beginning to see better improved facilities, infrastructure.
Yes.
If you go to the whole of Agbadoke Odo, it's all done now. And then
even Ayobo, the road networks are also much improved.
Yes, absolutely. So you will see some major improvement in the situation in relation to infrastructure. But I think one of the major problems why people refuse to come out and vote is this issue of money. They didn't have the cash. Then two, in Alimosho,
and they were not mobilized.
The distance, they were not, that's where I'm going now. The distance between one polling unit and the other is farther than on the mainland.
Because it's vast, because the local government is
huge.
Is bigger.
So because of that distance, many people felt the party leaders were not on ground to mobilize people, to encourage them. It doesn't mean, mobilization does not necessarily mean giving people money. Even just to encourage them to say, look, you need to come out. And, that did not happen in Alimosho throughout the whole voting. And I think it's something which APC needs to watch out for. They have to be able to get out their supporters, to go and vote. They have to get the party leaders to do what they have to do to get those supporters to come out to vote. There's nothing the party can do or the governor can do about the cash-strapped economy. That's basically a CBN decision. But we can do a little bit more by explaining, they can do a little bit more by explaining to the people that, look, this is our plight, it's beyond what we can help for now, but why not come out and exercise your franchise within a short period of time? This will be over. So I think they need to do a little. I would agree with Jide. The leaders should be held responsible for the loss, of Ashwaju. They were beaten and complacent, and they need to do more than what they have done. I will conclude.
There was a video that I saw in 2019, where Ashwaju was addressing party members at their secretariat on Acme Road, and he was praising the local governments where they got good votes. I still remember that video, and they was saying, Ikorodu, he praised them. The local governments that didn't really turn up, where they lost the election. Ashwaju mentioned the names of those local governments. He was saying, this and that. He mentioned them. The ones that he needed to praise, he praised them. Ikorodu showed up in this election again, with good numbers. Right. Badagry with good numbers. Ikeja, no, they lost the election here. Now ruling.
Shomolu lost.
So yes, they lost I was also surprised that they could lose Shomolu. Then I was surprised that they won Surulere.
I was too.
Then Bejuleki.
Koshofe, they lost. The APC lost in Koshofe.
Yes.
APC lost in Koshofe.
When you look at Ikosi Ketu, they won, they delivered. They lost the Agboyi Ketu. That's the other side of the road. That's where they lost, which they need to do a little bit more work.
It wasn't a wide margin.
No, it wasn't a wide margin. I think the chairman of the local government here, Princess, I think she tried, but in terms of mobilizing people, so they were able to win Ikosi Ketu. But when you talk about the other side, Agboyi Ketu, that's where the problem happened. APC lost that place. So they need to get the leaders in that area, to do a little bit more work if they want to win the governorship.
You have to do a post-mortem and find out where they got things wrong.
Ekpe delivered.
Yes,
for
and I was surprised. But Ekpe delivered to good numbers.
Lagos Island, Lagos mainland.
Even Badagry.
Yes, Badagry was one of the first results.
And a portion of Apapa as well also delivered. But although the Apapa was for the APC, they voted for the APC. Etiosa
was bad. It was really bad for the APC. It was Bejuleki that they won. Part of Lekki Phase 1 is actually inside the Etiosa.
Yeah.
So they lost there. But they won Bejuleki. In fact, I didn't know that they won Bejuleki, but they won Bejuleki. I think that is from I think around Aja all the way to Akodo. Those are the communities in Bejuleki. Yes, so they won there. Where you have the Aboriginals, APC tends to do very well. In communities that are very cosmopolitan, they struggle. That's why they have to change their approach. They have to find the right strategy to reach people in those communities if they want to win the governorship election. Because the Labour Party,
they're energized now with what
yes,
people say
yes.
naturally.
I heard what their candidate was saying on one of the TV stations was even in victory, you could feel the arrogance, accusing APC of rigging in spite of winning the election, in spite of winning the election, and his wife is Igbo. So that could be another outlet to mobilize votes, So we really need to work hard, otherwise. In fact, the candidate was boasting that Sanwo-Olu will not get a second term. He was boasting on TV that this is the last time Sanwo-Olu will be governor, won't get a second term. So that should get them to really realize that this is an election like no other. They should work really hard.
Absolutely.
I also thought about something, the possibility of a collaboration between the PDP and Labour. But looking at
even with the numbers,
it won't make sense. It won't make sense. It won't make any difference to the fortune of APC. But what I think the governor needs to also work on is Ibejuleki used to be PDP stronghold.
Yes.
They were able to turn that around. And then also the lessons from how they were able to mobilize their supporters out. Because I understand, including past administrators and all of them were all out, trying to get the people out. And the same thing happened in Agege, where they got virtually whoever has been a past chairman of local government or SLG, had to be on the field to deliver the areas. I think these are some of the lessons which they need to look at. Otherwise, we'll be in for another shock. But I hope not. Come on the 10th or 11th of March.
All right.
In 2011, something like this almost happened. The saving grace for the party was the postponement of the election by 1 week. The preliminary results that came from that aborted election showed that the ACN was losing. So Asiwaju had to, we saw that opportunity, they said, wow, so this is how we will have lost. And then it turned things around. Yes, it turned things around. Right. So it's possible to turn things around this time too. But the opponent is quite strong.
All right.
They have to really work hard.
All right, gentlemen, we'll put a cap on this leg of our discussions. Babajide Kolade Otitoju and Biodun Showumi, thank you very much for speaking with us. All this while, and sharing from your great insights on the program.